Okay. Hello and welcome to the January 28th, 2013 meeting of the Hillsborough Board of Education. In accordance with the State Sunshine Law of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting of the Hillsborough Township Board of Education was provided on January 23rd, 2013 to the Hillsborough Beacon and Courier News. May I have a roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood?
Surely. Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Here.
Okay. Ms. Santafonte? Mr. Gillette?
Here.
Mrs. Haas? Here. Mrs. Haley? Mrs. Lay? Mr. Pulsifer?
Here.
Ms. Soissons?
Here.
Mr. Kint?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231 of the laws of 1975 provides that a public body may exclude the public from that portion of a meeting of which the public body discusses certain matters for which confidentiality is required as permitted in Section 7B of the Act, resolved by the Board of Education of the Township of Hillsborough in the County of Somerset in the State of New Jersey as follows. The matter to be discussed is negotiations with the Hillsborough Education Association. The matter discussed in executive session will be disclosed to the public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists. I'd like to entertain a motion to enter executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We're in executive session.
Lorraine passing, Greg Gillette second.
Okay.
And you said you were going to say something?
Yeah, I got my notes.
You were.
Okay, we're back from executive session. If I can have a roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Surely. Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Here.
Ms. Santafonte?
Here.
Mr. Gillette?
Here.
Mrs. Haas? Here. Mrs. Haley? Mrs. Lay?
Here.
Mr. Pulsifer? Ms. Soissons?
Here.
Mr. Kint?
Here. I just want to acknowledge, at the request of Jen Haley, for her absence. Her father passed away this weekend, and that's the reason why she's not here tonight. So our condolences go to her and her family. If we can rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Pulsifer has joined us.
Oh, thank you.
So we have received correspondence as listed in the agenda, and I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Schiff for the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, President Kinst. Tonight we're going to have a few different presentations. Our first presentation is on a plan called an ESIP, an Energy Savings Improvement Plan. Scott Mahalik, one of the architects from our architect of record firm, SSP, is here tonight, along with Emily Hammer, another person who works at SSP, to walk the board and the public through the process of how we can generate a great deal of savings, and then those savings could be used to finance capital improvement projects. So with that, I have it on my machine, and I'm going to project it in just a second, but maybe Mr. Mahalik could just introduce himself and Ms. Hammer.
Sure, thank you. And do I need anything to advance slides, or?
I'll click it for you.
Okay.
Or you could probably use your clicker, but either way. We'll
Okay,
mention it.
thank you. Good evening. Again, my name is Scott Mahalik with SSP Architectural Group. Here to speak about one of the initiatives that we've actually been working on here in the district, going back for about a year or so. As the superintendent indicated, dealing with a way to advance a certain grouping of projects under a different funding structure. It is both a very simple concept as well as a very complex procedure that's been outlined by the state. So my goal this evening is to try and walk through, I know the Operations Committee has heard this a few times now, and it's really to walk through the structure of what that program is and some of the ways that we can look to take advantage of it. As with any state program, we run into a little bit of alphabet soup. And the first thing that I wanted to run through was really some of the acronyms that you hear associated with this program. It's interesting because even those in the state agencies will sometimes confuse ESIP and ESCO and all sorts of things like that. The ESIP, the Energy Savings Improvement Program, is the name of the program that thank you, that has the funding mechanism tied to it. From there, everything else really is a subset. There are the LGEAs, which are the local government energy audits. This is something that this district has sought, has obtained for 6 of your 9 buildings, and this was done at 100% reimbursement back to the district. This was effectively no cost to you. Your other 3 buildings were actually done under a similar Somerset County initiative. These LGEAs identify energy conservation measures, which are ECMs. These are effectively standalone projects, a boiler replacement, replacement of lighting at a school, and each measure is outlined with a scope of work, a rough cost estimate, and a savings or a payback year. Once the district has these energy conservation measures, we're then really prepared to take the ball and advance it down the court a little bit and work into that actually energy savings program. There are really 2 ways to do that. There's using an energy savings company, which is an ESCO, or a DIY, a do-it-yourself model. There are 2 other alternate programs, a pay-for-performance and a direct install, and I'll get into what those are a little bit later. But those really are the general acronyms that you'll hear talked about with this type of program. And I'm not advancing. This isn't working. The entities that are involved, a lot of these are the same that you would be dealing with any project. The Board of Education, your architect, engineer, your attorney. These are all typical to what a board would be doing undertaking a project typically. There are some additional oversights. There is the Department of Board of Public Utilities that oversees the whole process. There is that ESCO company who is a third-party, basically design builder who can be brought in to do this type of work. There's a third-party company, third-party engineer who needs to come in and verify your energy savings. There are financial advisors and the contractors who you would have in your school. When I talked a little bit about this being very simple and being very complex as well, really the genesis of this program is that it allows you to take a project that would save you energy and use those energy savings to pay for the project. In the past, if you had a $5 improvement that you could do to something to save $5 million, if you didn't have that $5 up front, you couldn't do it. There was no mechanism to tie those together. This ESIP program really ties those together, so it allows you to use the savings that you're going to gain over a 15-year period to effectively pay for the projects that you're looking to do. So it's really, when I say that it's simple, that's really how it's very simple. Because it sounds like it's a little bit of a risky proposition, that's why there are so many oversights. There is a third-party verification that you're mandated to have. The Board of Public Utilities is looking at your calculations. There's really a lot more layers that are involved to make sure that the board is not left holding the bag at the end of this. We talked a little bit about we talked a little bit about the energy audits, which is something that the district has undertaken. From there are several rebate and incentive programs that are available to you. There's a direct install program, which really is focused for smaller buildings. I believe that you have maybe 2 of your buildings that might possibly qualify for that. These are for the smaller energy-consuming buildings. Schools that are above that, there is a Smart Start, which is a rebate program, which really applies for any kind of energy project that you're looking to do, no matter how you're funding it. And then there's also a pay-for-performance program, which really looks to maximize the energy that you're saving and return a financial incentive back to the district. This is not so much a funding mechanism as it is really a rebate program. This is looking not so much to reduce your cost, but to reduce your energy consumption, and that's why it's structured as it is as a rebate. There are a whole host of projects that are eligible under the ESIP program. The long and short of it is, if it's a project that can save you energy and pay for itself within 15 years, it is generally eligible. We see a lot of lighting, HVAC upgrades, boiler and chiller upgrades, things of that nature. Renewable energy is kind of a tangent to this right now. There's not a lot of renewables going on right now because the market in New Jersey is not very stable, to say the least. And there is also the opportunity to fold in some additional projects that may be related to energy savings, even though they may not save energy. If we're replacing an HVAC unit because it can pay for itself, we may want to expand what that unit is doing or change how it's working, which may, at the end of the day, not save energy, but it might be the right thing to do at the time. So the program is really morphing itself to allow districts to really think outside the box a little bit in that way. When we look at, I don't even want to call this a timeline, but when you look at the process, again, there are some more steps involved because it's not a traditionally financed program. Again, you know, the district could really undertake any energy savings projects it wants to, if it has the upfront capital. And most districts in New Jersey in 2013 don't have the upfront capital to tackle the magnitude of projects that they may have in front of them. Hillsborough has taken the first step. You've gotten your local government energy audits done. So you've got you're green, you've got a check mark, you're well on your way. Really the next step is one of the reasons that we're here in front of the board, and that's to really determine if the board wants to proceed down this road of an ESIP, and if so, which method they would look to take. Now, we're not asking for, I'm not asking for a decision this evening, but really wanted to outline this whole process and this whole program. As I had said earlier, there are two ways that you can go about it. There's a DIY, which again, anybody who's watched a home improvement show, DIY is do it yourself exactly as it sounds, and that really involves you doing a project really the way you would. You'd hire your engineers, your consultants, they would design the project, put it out to bid, engage contractors, the contractors would do the work. Now within that, we have those checks and balances along the way from the BPU and your third-party verifiers, but otherwise it functions very much the same way as you've functioned for 50+ years here as a board. If you go with an ESCO, and ESCO is an energy services company, and what they do is they effectively work as a design builder. You'll think Honeywell, you'll think Siemens, Ameresco. These are the larger companies who have done this several times throughout the state, both for municipalities as well as for school districts. To get them on board, it's a little bit of a different procurement process, and that's across the top, those two beige boxes. There's a little bit of a time lag to get them on board. Effectively, there's an RFP that the BPU has developed that we would take, we would customize to fit the needs of the district, we would issue that. These ESCO companies would come back with a very detailed proposal with their preliminary energy savings plan and tell you what they see in the audits, what they would propose for your district. And then the board would then interview companies and select someone, not like a contractor from a low bid scenario, but more as a professional service because you'd be engaging them as a design builder. Once they're then on board, they are responsible for finalizing your energy savings plan, designing the work, bidding it out for you, overseeing the construction, and taking it from there. So it really becomes that true design build. Whichever way you go, whether you go with an ESCO and you take that longer route to procure or you do it yourself, there are a series of steps, again, that need to be taken once you decide which way you're going. The first step is really to verify that local government energy audit findings. What happens in that local government audit is you have what's called a level 2 audit. It's not investment grade. You don't bond for money based on the numbers that are in that. There is a third step, which is a more detailed audit, which has to happen no matter which way you go. And that's really the first thing. That's what determines the projects that go into this. Your local government audits identified 97 separate energy conservation measures, millions and millions of dollars with paybacks ranging from a little over 2 years to thousands of years for things that really don't give you that payback. That's got to get culled down, and that's what happens in that first development of that energy savings plan. And that will take a few months as you're working on your financing to really come to that point where you know exactly what projects you're advancing under this funding mechanism. Once you get to that point, you need to have a third-party engineer review it. So whether it's my team putting this together or Honeywell or Siemens or an ESCO, the board has to have an independent third party verify that, yes, these costs and these energy savings do check out. All of that then goes to the BPU, who similarly blesses everything before you're allowed to move forward. So you've got kind of 2 checks on yourself before you move forward. From there, you get into the design, the bid, the build process. You still have contractors in your school. It becomes more of a traditional process from there. And then at the end, you have a third party verifying that those savings do materialize. The last slide here really talks a little bit about the differences between the two, the ESCO model and the do-it-yourself. We talked about the first item, the ESCO functioning as a design builder as opposed to traditional. The fee structure, there is a larger fee for that. The ESCOs we've seen anywhere in the 30 to 40% fee range. They're starting to come down into the upper 20s now as this process is getting a little bit more refined statewide. The do-it-yourself model we've seen anywhere in the 18 to 25% range. There's some differentiation there. The ESCOs do offer a guarantee on their savings for the first year or two, and that they are mandated to offer that. You are not mandated to take that, but they're mandated to give you a price. Whereas on the more traditional side, there really are no guarantees. There's some market out there right now for third-party, banks and whatnot offering guarantees, but that's a little bit more untested. So that is a big difference between the two. You have third-party verification for both. You have the BPU monitoring and oversight for both. There is, under the ESCO model, a little bit of a loss of control in terms of what projects really get into that into their scope of work. We have some control when we write the RFP. We have some control in working with them as to what gets selected and put in, but ultimately it really becomes their call. Now, they're not going to do something you don't want them to do, but they may be a little bit more resistant to putting in something that might not be as big of an energy savings item as they would like. Whereas under the do-it-yourself, you really have full control over how you package these things and what you put in there. And then we talked a little bit about the timeline, that were a little bit shorter for a do-it-yourself. Really, at this point, we're in January 2013. Any of these processes, really, we'd be looking towards a summer 2014 activity for a lot of work to happen right now. So you're not under the gun. There's nothing imminent that we need any kind of decisions on. But it is rather a complex process that's also simple at the same time. So we wanted to bring this to the board. Again, we've talked about this at the committee level at a couple of different meetings. We've had a gentleman from the BPU come in and speak to those at the committee. He sends his regrets he was not able to be here this evening. But we wanted to offer the full board the opportunity to hear what we were thinking, what was being put on the table, and ask any questions and take it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mahalik, for your presentation. I'd like to open it now to members of the board if there's any questions or thoughts that we have. Sir Gillette is Chair of Operations.
Should I say something?
Sure.
I can. If I say something about it now, I don't have to talk about it in committee reports. All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Mahalik for the presentation. Thank you very much. This is basically the same presentation that we saw in Operations Committee. It is just as described. It's simple and sort of complicated at the same time. I like to think of it as really a verification and financing program for your energy-related construction projects. And what I mean by that is you could go now to, let's say, to your bond salesman or your bank and say, look, we've identified $6 million worth of projects, and we know that these are going to be great, and we're going to save $6 million in energy costs over the next 15 years. Loan us the $6 million, or let us sell $6 million in bonds. And they'll say, wait a second, we're going to take your word for that? That you have the $6 million, that you're really going to get that? I would say, well, yes, take our word for it. Well, this you don't have to take a word for it. With the verification process, the energy savings are going to be calculated to always be there, a positive cash flow, all 180 payments, or however many you pay. I'm just thinking monthly payments for 15 years. And not only that, but what Mr. Mahalik I don't think he mentioned, is that you can even buy insurance just to make sure you absolutely get the savings. We had a representative from the BPU come to our Operations Committee meeting, and he even advised, yeah, buy the insurance for the first 2 years. If you're getting the savings you're supposed to get, then you'll be on your way. And you want to, don't buy for the whole 15. So it's really a verification process. It allows you to use future savings to pay for projects all along the way, some starting right away, some starting over the course of the 15 years. What's interesting about it is that some projects pay off very quickly. And I think Mr. Mahalik mentioned in our meeting that something like lighting systems pay off within a few years. Right. Something like replacing a roof on one of our large schools, well, that can pay off too. And I think he said in about 11,000 years. So, and that was 11,000.
You're not far off. Correct?
Right. So, because it's just pennies a year or something. So you wouldn't roll in a roofing project into this. But can you put in a project that takes more than 15 years to pay off? Yeah, you could roll in a project that takes 22 years. If you've got enough projects that completely pay off in savings in 2 or 3 or 4 years, of course. In fact, you can even roll in, I think it was in our summary, 15% of your projects don't have to be actually related directly to energy savings. If you've got enough in savings over the course of the 15 years, you can put in something else. And we've talked about things like possibly some targeted air conditioning on the second floors of some of our buildings, maybe to get more use year-round out of our buildings. Some of them, like the one we're sitting in now, maybe the high school, things like this. If you've got enough savings, and you're still going to be able to fit in the entire projects within the 15 years, you can do that too. So the recommendation from the Operations Committee was to move forward with this. We hadn't decided whether the do-it-yourself model or the ESCO model was the most beneficial yet. I think we're still talking about that, but it's something that that the Operations Committee thought was very worthwhile, a way to get these projects done, revenue neutral, no cost to the board or the taxpayer, because it's all paid for with savings. All right, I'm done. Thank you.
If I can just add
questions,
one other thing about the do-it-yourself versus the ESCO, there really there's no Betamax here. There's no Betamax versus VHS. There are districts who are doing both. There's no one-size-fits-all, and that's really why I'm not going to come to you and say this is the way we recommend you do it. It really is a decision that needs to come from the board and administration, how you feel comfortable. My firm is doing both right now. I'm involved in one that we're helping guide a district where they're doing an ESCO, and we're doing one that we're doing as a do-it-yourself. So there's a mixed bag. One of the reasons we brought the gentleman from the BPU to you was because their oversight on all of this. We really wanted them to be able to be available to you to answer questions for both processes.
Mrs. Lay?
Sorry. Could I ask you, did you say the cost is going down on the ESCO down to 20%, so it would match a DIY?
We haven't seen it down to 20. When this program first rolled out about 3 or 4 years ago, ESCO numbers were some of them in the 50% and the 90%, just really astronomical numbers. As the process has been more refined and the BPU has gotten more involved and they've come out with more templates, we're seeing their numbers come down. The latest numbers I've seen had low numbers in the upper 20s. I think I saw one at 27 or 28%. So the gap is closing. It's still not closed yet. We're still seeing a gap of 5 to 10 percentage points between the lowest ESCOs and the highest do-it-yourselves. So they're not completely closed yet. I don't know that they ever will completely get closed. But the ESCO numbers are definitely, I'd say 28 to 35 as opposed to, 40 to 50 we may have been saying 2 years ago.
And the preliminary audits that you did, it showed, I know you were collecting a lot of data, but how do you cull from that? Is it based on a certain return on investment, or how would we evaluate?
What we've done at this point is we have the audits that were done both by CHA and by, there was another firm who did the county ones. They actually did the work and they came up with the lists of projects. We've taken a look at those and we've started to look and see what would make the most sense to package together. And as Mr. Gillette indicated, all of the quick payback items we would want to fold in, and then it becomes a matter of looking at which of the longer payback items do we want to try and fold into the work as well. We really won't know until you proceed down and get that next level of audit to see what the real numbers are, because some of the numbers in here are very preliminary. So as you get your next round audit done, your investment grade audit or level 3 audit as it's called, that will really be the actual numbers that we'll see. And at that point, we'll really be able to play with what exactly do we want to fold in here. And that's a decision that we make at the committee at the board level. That's not just us doing it unilaterally, so that we can really see how do you best mix and match things to make sure that you're well under the 15-year payback and to really get the things that are important to you. Roofs have a very long payback. You may have one section of roof that you can't fund any other way that you want to get done in here, and it may work with the financing, and that may be a strategy to employ. You're not going to get all of your roofs done, but there may be targeted things like that that you would strategically want to fold in to try and attack some of your high priority items.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mahalik. We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I want to shift gears and talk about a different part of our strategic plan, and that's looking at developing a STEM program at our middle school. This program, and I'm going to click it. There we go. There we go. Our STEM program at our middle school. STEM standing for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. It's a program that we're very excited to share with the board. Dr. Trabulski has been working with a group of administrators and teachers, and even a parent joined the group, to look at ways that we can provide a STEM opportunity for every single student that goes through our high school. Dr. Trabulski's committee did a presentation, actually two, to the Education Committee, and now we're here to present it to the full board as well as the public. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Trabulski.
Thank you, Dr. Schiff, and thank you to all the members of the Board of Ed for your time this evening. I'm very pleased to present to you the findings and our recommendations from the committee. As Dr. Schiff said, this is part of your strategic plan, an important goal within your strategic plan to improve our STEM education at the middle school level, potentially to the high school level as well. But it is also a national goal. In our committee work, there are a number of reports, many very recently, to the President within Congress, addressing the woeful inadequacy of American education from elementary through higher education in preparing our nation for the ever-increasing role of STEM in the workforce, internationally, nationally, and as a country. This is one of our national goals as well. So it's an important topic, I know, for our community, but for our country too. Before I go too far, I want to thank the members of the committee right up front because their work has been invaluable to this process. That is Joel Handler, the Director of Technology, Kim Feltry, our District Science Supervisor, and Tracy Nur, our District Math Supervisor, both who are here with me this evening too. Two of my teachers at the school, Joe McLean, who is currently one of our industrial tech teachers, and Lisa Keel, one of my science teachers, participate in this committee. And then an invaluable member as well, Diane Glass-Hardenberg, who's also here this evening. I thank Diane for coming out as well. Diane and her husband John have been members of strategic planning in Hillsborough as members of the community, and more particularly with our Robo-Raiders, our robotics team at the high school, volunteered tremendous number of hours in the success of that program. And so Diane, as a member of this committee, served in part as a liaison with our high school robotics team, which is certainly part of the inspiration for our initiative as well. So STEM is a broad term. It really refers to your entire program of studies: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And while we talk about a STEM-focused course or STEM-focused initiative, we first, as a committee, wanted to look broadly at our whole program of studies. And so I want to give you a little context before I give you the proposal so you can appreciate where we're coming from and why we're making the proposal we have. So first, naturally, we looked at science in our middle school, but beyond that, Alton Road and the high school as well. So we looked at our full program. And over the last 10 years, as the former science supervisor in the district, we have made some major changes to our program over the years between myself and Kim Feltry. Tremendous influx of resources, both curricular and facilities, that have shifted our program into a far more inquiry-oriented based program of studies. That is process-driven, scientific reasoning skills are as essential as the content. So 7th and 8th grade, 7th grade, the content may focus on forces and motion, energy, astronomy, weather and climate. 8th grade focusing on genetics, chemistry, and ecology. But as important as that content area, the focus on inquiry-based science, the scientific process, reasoning skills are as essential to that. So you'll see elements of engineering and technology are embedded within our science program as well. In the area of mathematics, again, the content topics are here, but once again, we've made great strides in our math program, infusing much more inquiry-based approaches, much more problem-based. So our 7th grade connected mathematics program is presented there, again, the topics. And in 8th grade, we have nearly a third of our students, perhaps a little more, are taking a full year of algebra. The topics that are presented here on the slide represent the Connected Math 8 program. But even within that, you'll see a great amount of algebra and algebraic reasoning skills embedded for all students, really, by 8th grade. Those who are taking full year algebra and those in our Math 8 program are still being exposed to a good deal of mathematical reasoning in the area of algebra. When it comes to the issue of technology, though, we don't have a dedicated technology course at the middle school. And the state of New Jersey does have a standard, Standard 8.2, which addresses this and calls for all schools to engage technology, education, engineering, and design for all students to develop an understanding of the nature and impact of technology, engineering, technological design, and the designed world as they relate to the individual, global, society, and the environment. And then those bullets represent various components that we should be addressing in our curriculum with regard to technology. Now, as I said, within our science and math classes, you'll see elements of creativity and innovation, critical thinking, decision-making, information fluency, collaboration. You'll see elements of this in our science and math programs. In fact, you'll see it in our literacy and social studies classrooms too. There are activities and topics that will address technology and society in various forms. But we don't dedicate time specifically to technology as a course. And then finally, the E in STEM, engineering, is a vacancy. We do not have a dedicated engineering component at the middle school level. And so this became the focus of our charge as a committee, to fill that gap. The first thing we wanted to do was decide, well, what are the essential elements we would want to propose in a new course if it were to address engineering? And we consider these to be very important in every aspect of what we looked at in terms of programs and ideas and ultimately proposal. One, we want to make certain that it would be authentic for the kids. This would not be a kit-based program or a rector set simply putting things together according to a set program, but we wanted to be able to give kids authentic problems, applications of engineering skills that would be meaningful and substantial for kids. We wanted it to address the diversity of our students in terms of their culture, their learning styles, and ability levels. This is important to understand. Our proposal is not for an advanced course or a course for advanced students, but for all students. We, of course, wanted to integrate with other content and skills from across the curriculum. We wanted to dispel myths about engineering, whether those are gender biases or other myths that kids may have about what engineering is, what it can be, or whether it is for them. We wanted to engage all students in exciting and active approaches. This is not an academic course. This is a hands-on, get your feet and your hands dirty, building stuff, constructing things, testing them, and so forth from the ground up. We wanted to use high-quality curricular resources that are linked to state and national standards. We want to partner with corporate, university, or community resources best we can that would help us not only to engage the program, but promote career awareness and also assist us with our teacher professional development. And we wanted our proposal to highlight the breadth of the field. While robotics was certainly an inspiration to us, we also recognize that beyond mechanical engineering, civil, electrical engineering, aerospace, biomedical, environmental, there are many, many branches of engineering and technology that could appeal to a wide range of students. And we want our proposal to address that too. We were fortunate in our review to come across two, I think, outstanding programs, just by way of example. Project Lead the Way and Engineering by Design. The first, Project Lead the Way, is developed by an independent nonprofit organization, but it is present in nearly all 50 states, and it's gained some real prominence in several states. In the state of New Jersey, Rowan University, their School of Engineering, is the partner university here in New Jersey that would be a site that we could partner with if we chose to implement that program or use their resources in some fashion. The other is Engineering by Design, and this program is developed by the International Technology and Engineering Educators Association. It too is a national program that has particularly gained prominence in the Northeast regional states to New Jersey. And the university partner here is the College of New Jersey. In particular, the STEM Center for Excellence at TCNJ is heading a pilot program grant funded by the state of New Jersey to promote engineering by design. This side-by-side map, just to reflect that these two programs have been implemented in quite a few schools all across the state of New Jersey, from north to central and southern New Jersey. So there are quite a few school districts that are implementing these programs currently. Just a quick overview, just to highlight a couple things about them that may be questions you'll have. Both programs, in this case Project Lead the Way, have both a middle level and a high school level program. So the middle level is called Gateway to Technology, and then you'll notice they have two paths for high school level. So if this were a program we wanted to move forward with, it has components that would expand up to the high school, both in terms of mechanical engineering and biomedical sciences. Oops, these two modules that I'm presenting here, design and modeling and automation and robotics, frankly, the entire program, Project Lead the Way, is built upon modular systems, about 9-week modules of study, fit into basically a marking period. These two, design and modeling, which is sort of a CAD-based unit of study, and automation and robotics, pretty much what it says it is, are their foundational components. So to implement Project Lead the Way, you would have to implement these two modules essentially 2 marking periods of study. But their program includes a number of other topics. So depending on our interest and how we wanted to build out the course, if we wanted to extend beyond 1 marking period or a semester, you could build a full year course or even 2 years of courses by putting together modules like flight and space, electrical engineering, green architecture, energy and the environment, science and technology, and so forth. And there are a few others that they have in development currently as well. In the interest of time, I'm going to pass over the video. And Timberlane Middle School in Hopewell, New Jersey is one of the sites that has implemented Project Lead the Way now for several years, both at their middle school and high school. We visited that school, which you can see in the image here is actually 1 classroom, the front of the room and then the back of the room, essentially taking a full-size industrial arts classroom they had there in the past and cleaning it up, making it a higher tech room with computers, both at the workstations in the back, an area for direct instruction towards the front, but still also keeping some of the equipment that they would use for design and building and so forth and constructing items. Essentially, these are facilities like we have at the middle school, only ours are still in their traditional industrial arts form, so it would be something we would need to modify, similar to what Hopewell has done. The other program, Engineering by Design, just for comparative sake, their program also includes middle and high school level courses. The middle level program is built on semester or half-year courses, one for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. However, they say you don't necessarily have to do one as a precursor to the other. The 3 in the middle school can sort of stand alone, or you can use them however you wish. The high school level program is designed around a foundational course, a capstone course, and then several that you can use within the sophomore and junior years if you chose. But again, these are semester-based courses for the middle level and full-year courses for the high school. By way of example, here's 2 of their semester-based programs, Invention and Innovation, Technological Systems. Again, similar kinds of activities that would go on. This curriculum is a little bit more flexible. There's a variety of options. It's not so much a program-based so much as it is a curriculum guide, and you can select the activities, the direction you want to go to meet your particular curricular objectives for your community and the curriculum we want to design. Pardon me. One of the schools we visited where this is in place is Livingston. Their Heritage Middle School and Livingston High School, I think, are at the forefront of technology education in the state of New Jersey. They've got a phenomenal program there that is not only using engineering by design resources within their curriculum, but they have a lot of extracurricular activities as well that promote women in engineering, as well as advanced projects for students who are more gifted or interested in pursuing STEM programs more intently. Just a few of the resources that we called upon I share with you. Okay, so here's our proposal. After looking at all these initiatives as well as our standards, our current program at the middle school involves a 4 marking period cycle, industrial arts, family and consumer science, art, and music. And students cycle through each of these 1 marking period each. Our proposal is to change that cycle to a semester-based cycle that would replace industrial arts and family consumer science with a semester of tech engineering. And the second semester in the cycle would be the traditional art and music, essentially the same, 1 marking period of each. But the tech engineering would be a combined course where they would be with 1 teacher for essentially 2 marking periods of work. Now, if the board wishes to move forward with this proposal or a modification of it, these are several of the things we'd have to take into consideration. And just very briefly, to share with you, one of the 2 programs we just talked about a moment ago, there were elements of engineering by design, particularly its flexibility and its prominence in the state of New Jersey with the College of New Jersey, that caught our attention as potentially a model program that we would want to use. Although they are semester-based courses, they do have a guide that can shrink it down to a marking period-based course. You can sort of pare your course down and cover essential elements or select from it what you find to be most essential. So although it's designed for a semester, it could be based into a marking period only. One of the things you may see come up in budget for this year are some additional extracurricular activity proposals. Some of these currently exist at the middle school, our Science Olympiad, Math League. We have a robotics program, but it's been difficult to sustain, in part because the program has outpaced what it was originally and what stipend was available to it. It was simply a club activity in the past. Now it's a very substantial program. And so there's a proposal, a part of the budget proposal, to increase the stipend for that, to make it more substantial to the nature of that program, which is almost sport-like nowadays. But also to add some additional programs, like joining the Technology Students Association and creating particular activities that would encourage women and girls to pursue interest in STEM. One key component, whatever we do moving forward, will be teacher professional development. Once again, the College of New Jersey is offering, through this grant through the state of New Jersey, free professional development for teachers as part of their Engineering by Design program. They have a cohort currently this year of schools that have joined, and they were looking to start a second cohort of schools for this summer that would provide training in those materials and resources, and also technical support during implementation. And in part, they're going to look at data, how our kids are doing and how our school is doing with the implementation as part of the project, if we chose to partner with them. In terms of operating budget, many of the things we currently budget for in the industrial arts and family and consumer science budget would simply transfer over to the consumable materials we would need for a STEM program. So I don't anticipate significant increases there. Even in terms of computers and software, we're talking more about, as we move closer to a one-to-one initiative, adding computers into the room may be a thing of the past as students bring their own devices in. And some software like Google SketchUp, a CAD software, a simple one, is in fact free. So in terms of operating costs, we don't anticipate much impact there. The major impact would be facilities and capital improvement. If the board chooses to go forward with this proposal to its full extent, we would need to not only renovate our existing industrial art rooms, but we would need to upgrade and renovate other locations in the building, namely our family and consumer science would transition over to industrial arts. Along with that, it would be nice to see us make some added improvements to our art and music program facilities as well. I'll just throw a plug in for art and music. I know it may be difficult to see the map. Maybe that's not relevant to tonight's presentation. One of the things that we would like to do, it's difficult to see, but on the upper left-hand corner are industrial arts rooms, our family consumer science, art, and some music. In talking with our architect, we were looking at a proposal that could create a nice wing of the building right there dedicated to STEM and to art, and centralize some of our music, band, and so forth in another corner of the building. So our music, band, orchestra, and so forth would all be in a common location, and our STEM and art teachers would also be located in sort of a common wing, and we could make some substantial improvements to those two areas as well. Okay, so finally, the implementation plan. We put together a 3-year, rather aggressive timeline. The first year is what we're currently in. So year one was to do our evaluation of this and present to the Board of Education this proposal. That's where we are currently now in between the fall and spring. If we choose to move forward with this, then this summer we'd want to seek teacher professional development, adopt a program, or at least begin the development of a framework for our curriculum, begin ordering new materials, and at the very least make revisions to our existing industrial arts classrooms. For year two, we would want to phase the program in. So year two is essentially only to make renovations and changes within our existing industrial arts marking period and phase the program in as one marking period. Continue with family and consumer science during year two, while our teachers begin the transition over to a more tech engineering program. If we were to choose to expand the program, then hopefully in the summer of 2014, we would look at, it would also give us time to develop a more complete picture of what facility renovations we would need and to expand the curriculum and add additional teachers for a full implementation in 2014. Now, that's the most aggressive timeline. Naturally, this is something that could be extended out. We could take more time to evaluate how the program is going on a marking period basis before consideration of a semester-based course. The one thing I do want to leave you with, though, and then I'll be happy to take your questions. I referenced at the beginning several reports, reports of Congress, reports to the President, that have emphasized the importance of STEM as an initiative for our country. And so one of those reports that was made to President Obama in 2010 to prepare and inspire K-12 education in science, technology, engineering, and math for America's future made this, I think, a very important conclusion. In the 21st century, the country's need for a world-leading STEM workforce and a scientifically, mathematically, and technologically literate populace has become even greater, and it will continue to grow, particularly as other nations continue to make rapid advances in science and technology. In the words of President Obama, we must educate our children to compete in an age where knowledge is capital and the marketplace is global. STEM education is essential to our economic competitiveness and our national health and environmental security. It is also our obligation to empower future generations with the tools and knowledge they will need to seize the opportunities and solve the global problems that they will inherit. STEM education is critical to the nation's roles and responsibilities in the world, including our ability to play a role in international development. I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trabulski, for this presentation. I'll turn this over in just a moment to Mrs. Lay, the chair of the Education Committee. Dr. Trabulski and the members of the committee who attended did a very nice job making the presentation. There was concerns, however, that was expressed by the Education Committee about the elimination of the Family and Consumer Science program at the middle school. And as a result, and again, I'll turn this over to Mrs. Lay in just a moment, the recommendation of the committee is to move ahead into the second phase of the project, but the committee is going to want to see a report of how that's working before the committee is ready to commit to a full semester program, which would lead to the elimination of the Family and Consumer Science program. That they weren't there yet, but wanted more information at that point. So I did want to make that clear before we began discussion with the full board. So at this point, I'd like to open it up. Maybe I can defer to Mrs. Lay.
Yeah, we, on the Education Committee, we truly understand the value of STEM, and New Jersey School Boards also has they've already hired someone to work specifically on STEM. So it is a critical element for our students. At the same time, we thank the committee for their very thorough work and research. And they did explain why it couldn't be enfolded into the science and the current science and math curriculum at the middle school. So because it's in the industrial arts area, they have to modify that course. And that is what we call wood shop, I think is that. And so the students there enjoy that. They have a hands-on experience, and this is something that we know we have to give up or adapt. So the one thing that we would like to express is the hands-on experience is very valuable for students, and the committee did acknowledge that. It's something that I saw firsthand when I visited the robotics, the Roborators, and we really would like to capture that, and that's why Engineering by Design has a little bit more flexibility in their program, and hopefully we can do that kind of engaging activity. For in year 2, it was recommended to continue with the family and consumer science classes, which are cooking and sewing, and we believe that part of educating students are basic life skills. It's really important for them to have it. So we would like to have the 9-week program and then evaluate and see how that's impacting the students before we even consider year 3. I think it's a fair thing to evaluate and assess, because this is a remarkable program because it's impacting all students. A lot of the other schools have electives, or they have choices that are in the high school level. In Hillsborough, we're targeting middle school. We want to make sure that all the students have this experience, and so we want to do it right. We want to engage them, and that's why we want to have that time to evaluate. Do the other committee members want to say something? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Trabolski, for a wonderful presentation. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Schiff. Thank you, members of the board.
Our final presentation for tonight is going to be a report by Mr. Andy Renko on the violence and vandalism report. As many of you know, with the new HIB law, the harassment, intimidation, and bullying law, there is a requirement to report out twice a year. So we used to just report out once a year at the end of the year on the violence and vandalism report as required by law. You'll be doing it now twice a year moving forward, and including information on HIB. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andy Renko.
Thank you, Dr. Schiff. And before I start, I just want to thank the board and the Central Office Administration for having had the opportunity to bridge the gap between Scott Rocco and Guy Whitlock. One of the board members said this is a remarkable program, and there are many remarkable things going on in Hillsborough through the vision of Dr. Schiff and through the influence of the Board of Education. I think it's a very, very exciting time here. And I'm not one who's gratuitous with my praise for those of you who know me after I hung around for 12 years in Somerset County. But I think you people are on the verge of some really wonderful, wonderful things to come for a whole lot of reasons, because of staff and leadership and board, and it's exciting to see these type of things. I'm here tonight to present the Violence and Vandalism Report, and also the Harassment, Intimidation, and Bullying Report, which is a requirement from the State Department. Actually, it's required by law. And some of you may remember the Violence and Vandalism was presented once a year, and it was usually sometime in September, October, but those reporting requirements have changed. And so tonight, I'm going to give you the report for the period of September 2012 to December 2012. One of the definitions that I want you to be familiar with is what's called the unduplicated total. And what this says is simply if there's one person who commits 2 crimes, we don't duplicate the total. We count it as 1. In this particular case, and I'll point the 1 out, it only happened 1 time this year, but that's the way we report it to the state. The first part of the report is the violence and vandalism reporting. And how we've broken it up is for period 1, 2012 to 2013, which is really September to the end of December. And we did a comparison to last year. And I think it's really important to see the positive change that has occurred. If you look at the entire year last year, violence, 67 incidents. Violence this year for the first period, 6. No violent vandalism for the first period, which is the September to December, 5 incidents last year. 2 weapons, which were pocket knives, 3 last year. Substance abuse, 5, which involved 4 students. 8 substance abuse last year, and 1 confirmed case of HIV, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. And I think that's a dramatic change, and I'll touch upon why I think some of the reasons that's occurred here in Hillsborough at the end. Now, if you look to the active violences, which is next slide, simple assault, and that could be anything from pushing to hitting. We had 1 incident of simple assault this year in that period. We had 9 for the full year last year. Aggravated assault, none and none, either period. Fight, we had 3 fights, 6 total last year. No robbery, no extortion, no sex offense. We had 2 threats, 1 in the period from September to December, 1 last year. 1 confirmed report of HIV, 52 last year. 1 threat last year, none this year. Now, one of the things that has happened with the HIV is, like all districts in the state of New Jersey, we've learned how to manage it better. We've learned how to be more discerning. That's one part of it. The other part is we've created supports, we've had an influence with a lot of programs that are going on, and there's been a general awareness in terms of the culture in the schools, and that has had a dramatic effect. Weapons. Last year, and again, these are not my titles. And last year when I presented this to my Board of Education and I put explosive devices, I could see the eyebrows raised. But no explosive devices, no possession of firearms, no assault with a firearm, no sale or transfer of a firearm, no assault with a weapon. We had 2 incidents in which two students had pocket knives. And last year, we had 3 incidents, again with pocket knives. So we had 2, and we had 3 in the previous year. So again, the incident of weapons in the school district, and it's a positive. It's not something to be dismissive with. That's very positive, and again, I think it's because of the culture that's been created here. Substance abuse. And I said to you before about the duplicated. If you look in 2012-13, there were 5 incidents which involved 4 students. But I thought it would be confusing if I put an unduplicated total of 4 when you see 5. Last year, there were 8. So let's look at the reports of violence and vandalism by school. Hillsborough High School, 11 this period, 31 for the first period last year, 11 for the second half of the year. Hillsborough Middle School, 1 for the first period, 19 for the first period, 7 for the second half of the year. Orton Road, 1 for the first period, 2 for the similar period, and 3 for the second half. Amsterdam School, no incidents, 3 for the first period last year, none for the second. And you can see as we go through and get to the elementary schools, we diminish in terms of the incidents. Sunnymead, 1 last year for this period. Triangle, none this period or last year. Woodfern, none for this period. 2 last year for this period, none for the second half. And Woods Road, we had 1 for the second period last year, none prior to that. So the incidents are greatly diminished. And what I want you to look at is period 1 this year, 13, the period 1 last year, 58, but even compare it to the spring, 13 to 23, and you can see a general decline in the amount of incidents that occur in the school. So now let's look at the reports of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Again, this is still new to us. We're still working through it. But I think we're doing a great job here in Hillsborough with our reporting, our logs, our attention to what's happening with children, the communication with parents, and the culture that we're creating. Period 1, Hillsborough High School, 2 for this period. Last year, the same period, 50. Again, not uncommon with the onslaught of reports that besieged every school district in the state of New Jersey. And you can see the second part of it, when we became more familiar with how to log it, how to report them, how to assess them, and interpret the law. There were 7. Affirmed by the board, none for this period for Hillsborough High School. You can look at last year, 25 and 1. And as we go through each of the respective groupings, you can see Hillsborough Middle School, none and none for affirmed incidents or reports. Orton Road, 8 for the first period, 1 affirmed. Amsterdam, none and none, reported and affirmed. Hillsborough Elementary School, 1 reported, none affirmed. Sunnymead, none reported, none affirmed. And the same for Triangle, and the same for Woodfern. And Woods Road had 1 and 0 affirmed. So you can see a tremendous, tremendous decline in the amount of investigations, in the amount of affirmed HIB. And again, I'll talk about a little bit about what I see happening. The next slide is just the definitions, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the definitions. But with the definitions, they talk about protected classes and what constitutes HIB. Protected categories, which we address, are mental, physical, or sensory disability. The effect of HIB, and we've seen an awful lot of it in the media, can be that this disrupts or interferes with daily operation of the school or the rights of other students. Victim can be insulted or demeaned, interfered with victim's education, and creates a hostile educational environment. The mode of incident is generally verbal, and the disciplinary action taken as a result of these has generally been detention, and in the case of weapons, suspension and counseling, or suspension of other privileges. In every case, the parent is counseled and the students are counseled. So what keeps our schools safe? School policies and procedures, and adherence to those policies, and understanding of the policies, and fastidious reporting procedures. School safety plans and school safety committees that develop those plans and engage a lot of people in those particular plans. Character ed programs, conflict resolution and peer mediation, bullying prevention, staff training, and cooperation with the Hillsborough Township Police Department. But there's 4 other ones I want to touch on. And if you look at the Department of Education website, they talk about 8 tenets of change. And there are 4 that I think are critically important. 1 is creating a culture and a climate that's positive for children. And I think you have that and you see the effects of that in your schools. 2 is effective school leadership. And I think you have that because you can see the results that are occurring with the diminished numbers that you're seeing. 3, it goes without saying, effective teachers. Effective planning, assessing what students are doing, so that we can tell, as a result of what teachers are doing, that students are learning. And last but not least is the engagement of your family and your communities. When you put those 4 together, folks, what you're going to do is you're going to see a community that values education, protects its children, and makes folks accountable in the public eye in the schools to do what's in the best interest of your children. And you're going to see that result with your children. So I think, again, I think the results speak for themselves tonight. Now, again, in accordance with law and code, I don't know if you're going to read a statement, Dr. Schiff, or not, but I do have to ask, are there questions, are there comments, are there inquiries that the public has to make, or does make? Any comments? Questions? Hearing none, Dr. Schiff, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Appreciate it. Are there any thoughts from the board? Any comments? So we appreciate your time. At this time, this concludes the superintendent's report, and I appreciate the board's patience going through 3 presentations in one night.
Moving on the agenda, we'll move to approval of the minutes. First up is to approve the minutes from the January 14th, 2013 regular meeting. There were some corrections that were submitted by Mrs. Masson, which I believe all board members has seen, communicated through email. Any discussion or questions with regard to the regular minutes? Mrs. Haas.
I don't know what corrections were submitted, but on the January 14th minutes, there were a couple of motions to approve the minutes of December 17th that said that the motion carried with 5 members in favor and Mr. Gillette abstaining.
Yep.
Is that the one that you corrected?
That's one of them. Okay. Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Okay. I'll entertain. Do I need to entertain the motion? Or just, okay. I need to entertain a motion to approve the January 14th, 2013 regular meeting minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Abstain. Got a couple abstentions. So we have Mrs. Lay, Chris Pulsifer, myself. Any other abstentions besides the 3 of us? Okay. The motion passes. Okay, now I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the January 14, 2013 executive session.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, great. Any discussion? No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Same 3. Myself. Okay, and the motion passes. Okay. We're done with the approval of the minutes. Okay, now we'd like to open it up to the public first for public input on the 2013-2014 school budget. So for those of you who want to provide input to the board with regard to the upcoming budget, please feel free. If you can state your name and your address, please.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Dowd. I live at 24 Field Hedge Drive, and I'm not certain, but I don't want to miss my opportunity. Is this regarding the vote for the vote that you intend to do later in this meeting?
That's 2 points down for comments with regard to the action agenda.
Okay,
So I'll bring that.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't want it to go by and then
Yep.
miss my chance.
Understood.
I'll wait.
Okay, no problem. Okay. So no public input on the budget. Okay. Now I'd like to open it up to new business. I know we have some of that. I know we have some representatives from Team 75. This is your opportunity to present to the board and to the public. Come on down. And if you can introduce yourselves, please.
Hi, in case if you don't remember us, we are members from Team 75. I am Alina, and this is Jane. We spoke at the previous Board of Education meeting 2 weeks ago. At that meeting, we mentioned that our 2013 robot season had just begun. First, the program we are part of revealed the 2013 game in which our robot must accomplish certain tasks, such as shooting frisbees into targets and climbing a 10-foot high pyramid.
The first week of our season, the strategy sub-team started reading and interpreting the first handbook of rules and specifications regarding our robot. After memorizing these rules, they presented what they believed to be the best way to play our game.
Simultaneously, other sub-teams were also thinking of strategies that they thought would be best suited for this game. By the end of the week, our team had produced a final strategy.
This then allowed the design sub-team to start creating a virtual model of the robot. The design sub-team uses a program called Inventor to model these parts.
As design completes creating various sections of the robot, they are presented to the mechanical sub-team, which actually fabricates the parts. As we near the midpoint of our build season, members are starting to spend long hours at our warehouse to ensure the completion of our robot.
On another note, on February 3rd, this Sunday actually, Team 75 will be holding a pancake breakfast to raise funds for its team. Any donations are welcome. And as we mentioned at the past meeting, Team 75 will be hosting a science fair at the high school on March 9th. If you know anyone that's interested in submitting or volunteering with us, have them visit our website at roborators.com. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, any other public input for new business? Okay, now we'll move to comments from the public regarding the action agenda. So Mrs. Dowd, this would be your opportunity.
Don't everybody crowd up here first. Again, I'm Jennifer Dowd. I live at 24 Field Hedge Drive. Did everybody get my email that I sent out earlier today? Dr. Schiff, I really apologize that your name was misspelled. It was not intentional. I accidentally hit the send button before I corrected it. I apologize. But this is a day of history in the making. Dr. King acknowledged and knew that when one person is persecuted, it opens us all up. And this is one of those moments. You're voting right now to make a transformational shift in the relationship between citizens, the Board of Education, and school finance. This is a vote that will either debase yourselves of citizen support or build your base. This is like taking out your own legs from underneath you. You're voting either to disenfranchise us from our vote by state legislative actions that calls you in with financial incentives, or you are voting to uphold the public's right to be a check and balance on the school board. This is a monumentous time. Governor Christie has taken systematic steps towards state and centralized control over our local school districts. First, it's our vote, then it's you. You and 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 you. Well, maybe not you. This executive county superintendents are gaining more and more power through legislative action and repeal of previous legislation. How many of you have spoken with your constituents? How many of you have reached out to educate the public on the importance of coming out to vote on the school budget? We do not have sufficient data to move forward with this. I've given my reply to Dr. Schiff's thought-out statements for why we should move the vote. We need more time to consider this as a community. This is monumental. Hillsborough is one of the last to still be standing, and you need to keep your feet under you. We will be there to support you when the state comes and says, we're taking away your power because they're coming after you next. They're going to take out your base and then they're going to take out you. Let us work together to ensure that we can increase our financial savings, increase our students' opportunity to authentic learning opportunities, while working towards a thriving local economy, local natural systems. We can do this, but we need to do it together. You can't take this on alone. You need your citizens. Don't take away our right to vote. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dowd.
Dana Blevins, First Vice President of the Hillsborough Education Association, speaking on behalf of the association. I'd just like to respond to the same issue and say that I know last year at this time you were debating on whether to switch the election or not, and at that time we were on the side of switching the election. The board decided not to, based on not sure how things were going to go and kind of the philosophy of see how it goes everywhere else, and we were one of the few people to still have the election. If we do not vote to change the election tonight, we will be the only school in Somerset County to do so. And as we've talked at the last meeting, I believe that would increase our cost to our own taxpayers. This is the only place where democracy is kind of messed up, I think, where normally we elect officials, we entrust those officials to do a good job and to make the right decisions. If we don't agree with those officials, we then have the election process to vote those officials out of office and put someone else in there. We think we can do that. We don't vote on state budgets. We don't vote on national budgets. So I, again, would like to urge the board to consider moving the election, saving the taxpayers some money, doing a good job, and knowing that the public is watching, and if not, that's the way the election process works and people can vote in new people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins.
Christine Kirsch. I teach Family and Consumer Science at Hillsborough High School, and I would like to address the issues that Dr. Tyberski brought up earlier tonight. I'm very concerned about the concept of losing Family and Consumer Science at the middle school level. I'm concerned because it teaches life skills. It teaches what we need our children to leave high school having. And in order to leave high school having it, they need to have started at a young age. My program includes more than just cooking and sewing, which was referred to. It includes foods and nutrition for sure. Foods and nutrition integrate math and science. There's chemistry in cooking. There's measuring. There's so much biology involved. Interior design is another area in our field. Again, it incorporates math through all of the measuring and a lot of engineering as well. It includes art, the elements and principles of design, and so much more. Sewing, again, it includes measuring, the application of measuring. Child development, it includes psychology, sociology, science infused with growth and development, genetics, biology, and so much more. The program that I feel I'm representing tonight does teach math. It teaches technology, engineering, and science. It concerns me that it sounded as though the recommendation is to purchase a curriculum, teach something that is, for lack of a better word, a canned program, and perhaps eliminate some of the originality of our teachers. I'm concerned that we're going to segregate math and science and technology and engineering as something off in its own little wing of the school. Family and Consumer Science is a hands-on program that integrates everything. It shows students why they need math, why they need science, because they're using it in each and everything that they do, each and every day that they're with us. Everything that we do is authentic. Authentic experiences dominate our curriculum. I'm concerned that there will be a loss of creativity with the STEM program. I'm concerned about the ability to modify it for the community, where our teachers do modify our programs. I think that math and science need to be integrated into every subject that's taught, just as I integrate math and science and English and reading and every other subject. And all you have to do is look at my lesson plans to see how I meet the standards. They're there. And every other teacher as well does the same thing. I tried to take a lot of notes very quickly while Dr. Tyberski was speaking, and I think I've kind of hit on the high points that I wanted to mention. And I want to thank you very much for your time and for giving this a lot of consideration before you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kirsch. I'll speak briefly. As Mrs. Lay mentioned, when the Education Committee reviewed the proposal, that was one of the first things I think was unanimous among all four of us that said, that's a very important program. We value that, and for many of the same reasons that you did. So, and that's as Dr. Schiff mentioned, that we issued a charge to that committee to look, the administrative committee, to look at how that can be best fit. And we told them, think a little bit more broadly, can it be done at other grades and other manners? So we share the concern as has been expressed, and we're trying to do the best as we can with the constraints that we have. So thank you. Okay. Any other public comments with regard to the action agenda? Okay. Moving on to the committee reports. I will, who would like to start with the committee reports? Looking, Mr. Pulsifer.
I'll go first, get it out of the way. The Human Resources Committee met 2 weeks ago. We began with a very comprehensive overview from Dr. Rinko about his activities as the interim assistant superintendent for HR and in preparation for the transition to
Guy Whitlock. It showed he's been a very busy man. It also showed us a lot more about what goes on there, that some of which we may take for granted until we actually sat down and went through that whole list. But he gave a very comprehensive review of his activities and some ideas that, things he's noticed as somebody coming from the outside and sort of have a different perspective on what we're doing in the district. Some feedback for us to take forward with Guy Whitlock and for the board in general to go from there. So it was an excellent report to the committee. We followed that with a discussion of impacts based to the calendar based on Hurricane Sandy in terms of working days that were lost or may not have been made up at that time, and what needs to be done by various employees to meet their working requirements based on the days lost for Hurricane Sandy. The next item we discussed was some issues that came about during the transition from insurance plans as we left the state benefits plan. There is I believe, hope I get this right, in the state benefits plan, you have to work on average 25 hours a week to be considered a full-time employee. When we moved to when we left the state benefits plan and moved into our private plan, there is no stipulation there, and our contract, the contract with the HEA, is not entirely specific. There is a clause about 27 hours for some members of the association. I believe that was janitorial staff. Transportation, sorry, thank you. Transportation staff, but otherwise the contract did not address the issue. So we discussed some ideas about what we need to do to be clear for all, both for the members and for the board and for the district to understand what the rules are in that area. We followed that with a budget discussion, a preliminary. The administration presented us with a list of requests across administration that had been prioritized. We have not finished evaluating everything on that list, but the administration did give us touch points on what they consider to be the most critical requests in that list. Dr. Schiff then presented statistics on the expected enrollment for the 2013 and 2014 school year, which also will lead to our addressing these items in the budget in terms of staffing needs across the district based on our targeted class sizes at the different grade levels. We then discussed, as I guess probably most of you know from our previous board meeting and what you might have seen in the Patch and the Beacon, the process by which we had appointed Mr. Rinko to the position of interim and what came out of that. We discussed with Dr. Schiff that we felt that the process, we should have handled it differently, that we should have looked for more overlap at the beginning. Expecting that there would be times before Scott left that we might need whoever the interim was going to be in district at that time. And so we felt that that was necessary. We need to address that and set the record straight. And there will be a motion that the Human Resources Committee recommends, and it is a motion on the agenda tonight, that we amend the previous motion appointing Dr. Rinko as the interim to commence on December 14th of 2012 instead of, I believe it was January 2nd was in the original. Then we followed up with an update on the EE for NJ. That's part of the new teacher and administrator evaluation model. That's something that will be changing over the coming year and is a big change for the district. So it's discussing where we are with that and what steps we need to follow up with next. And I believe lastly, we discussed contracts for non-aligned administrators. This is something that had been on the table for a little while, and we closed up all the language that needed to be straightened out in the contracts, and those are also on the agenda for tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pulsifer. I'm just looking to see who's ready to report out next. Okay, Mr. Gillette with the Operations Committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. President. The Operations Committee met on January 16th. We had quite a few topics, but we've already discussed the ESIP, and Mr. Mahalik was here tonight, so I'm going to bypass that. I also made the committee's recommendations known. So besides the ESIP, we also had an update from Mr. Fusco on the capital projects. Nothing earth-shaking there. Everything was moving along pretty much to schedule. Mr. Mahmood discussed some transfers. We had a couple of interesting transfers in the finance area. Actually, I should mention that Mrs. Johnston was also present to explain some transfers for financial transfers for transportation needs in the special education area. And also, we also had the annual administrative transfer. That's something that we do every year to cover administrative costs. As I say every year, the state limits the amount that you can put in your initial budget for administration by statute, but then later on in the year you have to move some things around. Every district does that. This is part of the crazy Trenton process. But the exciting thing that we talked about, now let me get past all that. Let me get to the excitement. About a year ago, our transportation supervisor, Deborah Espinoza, came to see the operations committee to talk about something. Who even knows what it was now? But she happened to just mention that, you know, and she was a fairly new employee at the time. Is that correct, Mr. Mahmood? Yes. Yeah. She's fairly new. She said, you know, I think there's some efficiencies that I can find in the way we do our transportation. So I'm going to take a look at that. We didn't even think, oh, is she going to take a look at it? Okay. We've heard that before. She came back at our January 16th meeting with a tremendous, fabulous analysis report that she spent months, I think, must have been months, preparing and analyzing to give us some options for how we could change the way our buses run and the amount of savings through that efficiencies that can be generated from that. So it's interesting when you see your bus going down the street, maybe up to your bus stop, the bus will have by its door there, it might say MS1, T4, HES3. Buses can make 2 runs, they can make 3 runs during the day. But over time, as we've added schools, we've added Orton Road Intermediate School, we didn't go back and reconfigure the entire structure. We just said, well, we'll just add some more routes, put out the bid, and we'll add more routes. And as time we've added schools over the years, no one has gone back to the beginning, to the core, and said, let's pretend we're starting from scratch. How would we like our buses to run? How many runs can they do? And the runs are called tiers. And how many tiers can we run in a day? How many routes can a bus do? What would be the most efficient ways? She came up with 6 options, and they range from what I like to call the most disruptive option, which is basically buses running 4 trips in the morning, 4 trips in the afternoon, uses the least amount of buses, but school start and end times would have to be changed dramatically. And you've all seen this in your packet. I hope all the board members have had a chance to look at this attachment in their packet. But those options could save as much as $1.7 million per year. But it's interesting that even the smallest, least disruptive options, changing just one school start time by 30 minutes, would still save close to $1 million in savings. So as we took a look and we had a long time for questions, she was wonderful. I don't know if she's here tonight, Dr. Schiff, but I don't see that she's here. Deborah's here tonight, but you can still ask questions because Dr. Schiff and Mr. Mahmood and myself can also answer, and the other people that were there. But even so we have option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can take a look at those in your packet. Some board members, when they saw this, they texted me or emailed me and said, well, what are we voting on this? Or we have to choose one tonight? And we did discuss this in the committee, and the board doesn't really vote on, oh, we're changing a plan, we're doing things. The board votes on school start and end times, and eventually they would have to vote to approve a contract when the bus routes are bid out again. What Ms. Espinoza was looking for from us today was if we could sort of come together around one of the proposals, the proposal that administration chose, and was also the one that was really highlighted in the operations committee, was what we're calling option 5. And option 5 would save the district estimated $950,000 per year in transportation costs and would move just one school start time. Can I reveal that? The big reveal? I can. Thank you, Dr. Schiff. It would, because I see Mr. Patton there ready to write down. The one school start time would be the Hillsborough Middle School, which currently begins at 9. What time, Dr. Tobolsky? 9 o'clock. Would move from 9 o'clock to 8:30. That would be the only change to our school start and end times. For comparison's sake, if we wanted to go for option 2, which is the most disruptive option, which could save us up to $1.7 million, we would have to change the start time of most of the schools. Buses would make 4 runs per day. The high school would start at 7:15 in the morning. That would be the earliest start time. They currently start at 7:30. And the Orton Road Intermediate School would have to be pushed later by something like 20 minutes or so to start at after 9:30 in the morning, like 9:35, I believe. That was deemed to be too disruptive, and other schools would have to change also. So as we're looking at this and understanding why administration made their recommendations, one of the considerations was to move to one of the more cost-saving options. We really would like more community input, support for that. We would, Dr. Schiff even mentioned community outreach, panel, group forming to get that. And when I heard that, I'm thinking, well, that's going to be hard to get done by September. To get anything going for this September, we would need a less disruptive option. I think that was one of the reasons that Dr. Schiff and the administration chose option 5 as the best option at this point. So I'm going to, we can talk more about that if you want to. That was the excitement for the Operations Committee. We also discussed the moving the election, board election from April to November. The minutes were a little disjointed there. Maybe they weren't expressed exactly how we expressed it. What we said was that we were all in favor of keeping the election in April, but in our process, in our new committee process, if no action is required and something doesn't go through committee, then it wouldn't even come to the board. But we felt that this was an item that, since it involved all the board members, their elections, that regardless of how, what our recommendations were going to be, we were going to ask for it to be an agenda item. And I might say also, and I'll say it now, because I'm doing committee reports, that I did express at the committee meeting that I was in favor of keeping the election in April. In the past 12 days, I've thought about it more, and you're going to find out later. So I might not be, don't hold me to that necessarily. You'll find out in about 15 minutes maybe, hopefully. That's all I have.
Okay. Mrs. Lai, with the Education Committee.
I can ask a question on his committee later.
I was going to do questions after.
Okay, all right, I have to remember it, all right.
Quick, write it down.
Okay.
Before you start talking.
Yeah. Okay, so the Education Committee met a day after yours, and so we did review the STEM program for a second time, and I just wanted to add a little bit more information that we had some information that the Family and Consumer Science program at the high school, there's actually 16 classes. We have 5 teachers, and there's some very interesting courses like advanced fashion design, independent living. But what's important is, as in anything that we do, you need a feeder program. So that's something to consider. Same thing for industrial arts. We have a very robust program there, and we have to consider how the students will learn the basic skills to progress into the high school level classes. And then, since I missed the previous board meeting, did we respond regarding food allergies yet? Should I report? Okay, all right. So at that meeting, we listened to too close? Is that- Okay, we listened to Lorraine Borek. She's the district's nursing supervisor. And she explained how 2 of our policies on school nutrition and management of life-threatening allergies in schools are being implemented throughout the district. She shared the concerns of some parents who have children with serious allergies, and we have also received letters from parents to explain their concerns that food is allowed in classrooms for demonstrations, birthdays, fundraisers, and class parties. After much discussion, the Education Committee recommended that the policies remain in effect and that food is allowed in the classrooms. We realize that more and more students have serious food allergies, and therefore we emphasize the value of asking other students and their parents to be sensitive to students who have these allergies. This is a really important message that should begin at an early age. In one of the letters, a parent asked to introduce a food allergy awareness program and mentioned that it has been successful in neighboring districts. These are steps that we can take as a community to keep students with serious allergies safe and to educate others so that they can be supportive of their fellow students. So that's the committee recommendation. Okay. And we also had an interesting student achievement analysis. Ms. Jun Shu, yes, she is our district data analyst, and she gave our committee a presentation that showed how a teacher, within that teacher's classroom, how you could look at the spread of the students' results, test results. And you could also look at it from on a group level when you compare to other teachers, and then also by classroom, so that a teacher could understand areas where the students can improve. So this is, now we're getting to the areas of understanding student growth. And it was very interesting. The committee expressed the concern that teachers need, it's a very sensitive issue for teachers, and Dr. Schiff commented that the administration understands that sensitivity, and that there is actually a lot of input across the district from teachers, and it's in a pilot phase. They're evaluating it, and they're going to pilot the student achievement report beginning this February. Is there anything else you want to add? Okay, all right. And that's it for highlights from the Education Committee. We are actually meeting again this month, this coming Wednesday, and we're going to review budgets for the coming year.
Thank you, Mrs. Lay. Okay, questions with regard to the committee reports? I'll open it up to Mrs. Lay because you had a question for Greg.
Yeah, so for many years, I always wondered why high school started earlier. And I think that from a development standpoint, from a child development standpoint, that, should I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh.
We talked about that. I'm getting ready to answer.
Oh, well, let me ask the question first.
Yeah, I know.
But
I need a buzzer like Jeopardy. I can't ring in until you finish the question,
okay,
right?
yeah. So it always intrigued me that we start the elementary schools later, and all the kids are up. They're already, up and waiting to go to school. And the high school students just drag their feet. They're really tired, and the first class is like, yeah, someone did this in the audience. So since we are evaluating, is there any chance that we could consider the development of students, their age and what they need? Like, high school students need more sleep, and I would appreciate it if we considered it.
Can I respond? I had the exact same thoughts that you did, Mrs. Lay, actually. I brought that to the committee, and I asked Dr. Schiff, because all the research or things that I've ever read says that high school students should maybe start latest in your district. Maybe the elementary schools a little bit earlier. Certainly the middle schools can go early, which I think we will do in this option, was to have the middle school go a half hour early, which they can certainly do. 8:30 is fine. Here's the thing. Our two nearest, schools that we compare ourselves to often, Montgomery and Bridgewater, both start at 7:20 at high school. So we're already 10 minutes later than they are. And what Dr. Schiff, and you can, if I misrepresent your remarks, please feel free. The students' after-school activities depend on ending high school at the same time as most of the other high schools who we participate in those activities with. And it would be great in a perfect world, or in even a, less mediocre world, if we could all go together on this. And everybody said, let's go for an hour. You got everybody in the, Skyland Conference, or everybody in this, whatever club or whatever, inter-school activity we do. Let's go for it this year. Let's do it. Let's everyone go to 8:30 for high school. But it won't happen. We're on our own here. The best I was able to argue for was to keep it at 7:30. There was a lot of discussion about, let's go for it. If we go to 7:15, look, we can save another, a couple $100,000 or something. But I just couldn't see it. Also, it was certainly was a recommendation of our high school principal to not go any earlier. So we're kind of stuck at 7:30 under most plans. But philosophically, I agree with you. High school should be maybe an hour later. We're kind of stuck.
Any other questions or comments with regard to the committee reports? Okay. Moving on to the action agenda. Dr. Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for the board's consideration of the following motions under the area of education: to approve the professional travel-related expenses, to approve the HIB investigative list. I ask that that we're going to remove as presented in closed session on January 28th. That's going to come out because we're currently not meeting in executive unless called for by the board. To approve the overnight field trips and the field trip destinations. The revision of the the applications of math and language arts literacy grades kindergarten TP 1 through 4. To approve the chemistry textbook, out-of-district placements and transfers, policy for second reading on use of defibrillators. And I understand that may be tabled for today. There was some suggestion of board members for some changes in language, but we can get to that. To approve the revised goals for the superintendent, to approve the submittal of the application of Teachers of Critical Languages program, which will allow for funding of possibly a teacher of Mandarin for next year, to approve a settlement agreement as per the attachment. That's all I have.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve items A1 through A12 with the adjustment for A2 striking out as presented in closed session on January 28th, 2013.
So moved.
And then have the discussion, or do you?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay.
That's,
So
yeah, that's how I was going to do it. Okay, so.
What are
So
you asking for?
I'm entertaining a motion to approve items A1 through A12.
So moved.
Okay. Discussion.
Oh, second. You have to have a
Oh, a
second.
second, yep.
Second.
Yeah, you can put Trian first and second.
All right, Tuyen and then
All right.
Greg. Okay, and then, so there's a request to postpone the.
With regard to A9, the second reading,
So what's the story?
there was a miscommunication. We discussed this at the last meeting. I don't know if I'm plugged in, but
That's better.
there was discussion at the last meeting regarding the policy as it currently read, and we discussed it a little bit afterwards, but the current reading changed something, but not enough. So we're going to discuss it again maybe in the Education Committee.
Okay.
and then bring it to the board after we address the issue of the public being able to utilize the defibrillators.
Can I make like a motion that we separate A9?
Absolutely.
Okay, can we separate A9?
Second. Do I have to second it?
Well, we're
It's
separating.
separating out, and then we'll
You gotta separate it
make a
before we do
motion
anything else with it, so.
to postpone it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Any other discussion for items A1 through A8 and A10 through A12?
Can I just ask, Dr. Antunes is trying to help me understand the whole language curriculum changes that are coming. Now, the submittal for the application of teachers, that's just grant money. That's not, that would help us in terms of getting someone, because I know there's still cost to us bringing on a teacher.
It's not money, it's an actual person.
Okay, it's a
And
person?
yes, if we
Okay.
got that, that person would be at the high school.
Okay. And then would we still have to, would there be any cost to us, I guess is what I'm questioning.
Not for this particular.
This one.
this
Anyone
one.
else we would bring in?
Yes, and it is in the budget.
That's where I'm confused.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm like, all day she's been trying to help me understand it, and I'm like, I'm not getting it.
Like, we win a teacher for a year or for 6 months or what? We like win, like you win the lottery, it's ours, no, we have to pay them?
It's actually a, which I believe is in your packet, the Teacher of Critical Languages program is a cross-cultural program where the American Council recruits and places English as a foreign language teachers from China into our schools. So it's sort of like it's an exchange, but they just come to us. What we provide to them is acculturation to America.
Oh, great.
And then they're on a J1 visa where they are only here for 1 academic year, then they must return to their country for 2 full years.
So we provide them a welcome to New Jersey?
Welcome
It sounds
to New
almost like
Jersey.
a penalty.
Hey now.
Hey now.
All right, any other discussion for, okay. So, do I need that?
Do we need another motion for everything that we vote on?
Okay, we're going to vote on items A1 through A8 and A10 through A12. Roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Ms. Kobachevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Wasson?
Yes.
Mr. Kins?
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to postpone item A9, motion to approve policy for second reading of policy number 5300, use of defibrillators for second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call. Roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Ms. Kobachevsky?
This
Yes.
is, again, this is a motion to postpone to
Yes.
next
Oh,
meeting.
to postpone, okay, yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Yes.
And Mr. Kins?
Yes. Okay, that
Thanks.
item will be postponed until next meeting.
I ask for the board's consideration of the following motions that I'm recommending under the area of human resources. The retirements, Linda Glickman, academic support instructor from Aunton Road Intermediate, who has worked in the district since 1993. Joanne Gordon, English teacher at the high school, who has worked with us since 2002. Barbara Parker, HEA president in the district, and has been working with us since 1984. Lorraine Podesky, social worker at Aunton Road Intermediate, who's been working with us since 1992. And Carolyn Quadrino, a part-time special ed teacher at Triangle, who has been working with us since 2008. We'd like to thank all of those educators, professionals for the service that they have given to this district, the children, and the community of Hillsborough. To approve the resignations as listed, the transfers and the change of appointments, the contract changes, to approve the revised start date for interim assistant superintendent, to approve teachers, instructional assistants, confidential secretaries, and approval of staff stipends for a respite night for the parents of our autistic children. This is a grant funded, actually was funded through private donations. Approved student teachers is listed. Approved student teacher practicums. many of them. To approve the non-aligned administrators' employment agreements, the group changes, and the revised substitute bus driver rate of pay.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve items B1 through B11.
On behalf of the Human Resources Committee, I move that the board approve items B1 through B11 as listed in the Human Resources agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Mrs. Swanson.
I would like to separate B2 and B5.3.
Okay.
And also, just a note, in B9, in Mrs. Johnston's contract, the first spelling of her name omits the T in her last name. Just wanted to point that out, so.
Thank you. We'll make a change.
You don't get your piece of our legal budget.
Mrs. Haas.
I would like to separate out, what a surprise, B4. And I would like to ask the question, if this matter was voted on by a quorum of this board at the last meeting, why this is being brought back to us again.
Okay, I can address that. This
We will-
motion.
If we're separating it, you want to save the discussion?
Sure,
or
that's fine.
We'll get the easy ones out of the way.
Okay.
Okay, so B4?
Yep, and I have some questions as well about B6 and B9 as well.
So would you like to separate those?
Sure.
Let's just do everyone separate. Do them all separate. I don't care.
Should we just take the whole thing one at a time?
I'm just marking down all the ones to try to make it. Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion, or we're voting on items B1, B3, B5.1 to 5.2, B7, B8, and B10 and B11. Did I get that right? Thank you. Okay, any discussion on those items? Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Swanson?
Yes.
Mr. Kint?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item B2 on the action agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Swanson?
Abstain.
Mr. Kint?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. Item B4, I'll entertain a motion to approve item B4 of the action agenda.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion.
Okay. Okay, discussion with regard to including item B4. The motion that was voted on last meeting, as I read in the minutes, was to approve payment for a set of dates. The motion for here is actually to amend a motion that was approved 2 meetings ago for the start date of the assistant superintendent for personnel.
Interim.
Interim, thank you. I capture that appropriately?
Yeah, I think so.
So it's a motion, this motion is to amend a previously approved motion, whereas the motion last meeting was for payment for specific dates.
Okay, so are we now talking about more than 5 days? Or are we talking about the same exact days that were voted down at the last meeting?
They would be for those same days.
Okay. Now, may I ask if we are also going to amend Scott Rocco's departure date, which was December 31st? Because that was another item. I don't believe you have an interim start before the incumbent leaves. And we did have an item on our agenda several months ago that Scott Rocco's final day would be December 31st. And that is why I believe we had January 2nd as the date to start.
Well,
You want more? You want more?
I'll throw in my piece. I think A couple of things I would add. First of all, as I mentioned in the committee report, we discussed this with Dr. Schiff, and we think there was a mistake in the process in terms of how this was lined up. But I think, certainly in my experience in working in these types of situations, typically I would expect overlap on both ends. So I would respectfully disagree in the sense of whether he should have started before Scott left. I would assume he should have, because you would want overlap both in terms of Scott transitioning to an interim, and then the interim, Dr. Rinker in this case, transitioning to Guy Whitlock. That's the process, that you wouldn't have the interim step in with no one there to tell him what's going on. So from that perspective,
long-term substitutes for our children?
I don't know.
Do we do that for long-term substitutes?
I believe so, but I'm not an expert. I know somebody.
I've never seen a long-term substitute start date on an agenda of a school board calendar indicate one day before the person going on leave is going on leave. Is this a practice that I've not heard of in 8 years on the board?
Could I finish with my thoughts?
Part of this. I really
I actually wasn't done yet. The other thing is, we quite regularly, and in fact, I'm pretty sure I saw them on tonight, maybe not, almost every meeting, we make adjustments to people's leaves, dates of service for different things, because inevitably, by meeting twice a month, there are times when the calendar catches us between actions. And so this idea that, you know, to me, this is doing the same thing we would do for a leave where there was an adjustment to a calendar, or if there was a need to hire somebody at a point where the board wasn't meeting. Sometimes we get in trouble with our August board meetings, and we fix that at our next opportunity. So to me, I believe there was a mistake in how this was scheduled in the first place, and similar to other calendar issues where we kind of get caught on the schedule, we're taking action to formally adjust to what should have been the case originally. That's not to say that the process didn't have errors, but at any time we have an error in our process, one of the things we need to do is set it right. And so I believe tonight's action is to set that right.
We had an incumbent present on our payroll and in our building. Okay, so honestly, I don't really see the need. I think I've made that pretty clear.
Fair enough. I would say that I hopefully have made myself clear that I would expect there to be somebody to instruct him as to what's going on. So we can disagree on that, but I think those are the opinions on the table. The reality is, for Andy to come in and do this job, somebody has to be there to bring up to speed on what is going on. And the person to do that is the incumbent. I get that, but to me, I would expect there to be some overlap, because how else is he going to learn and then pass his learning on at the other end?
For 1 month before another incumbent comes in. Okay. This is not appropriate. You know, when an item is put on an agenda and a duly formed quorum of the board votes on it, that should have some meaning. And if it doesn't have any meaning, we have no reason to be here. And if somebody wanted to change their mind about that, somebody could make a motion for reconsideration, but that was not done. That was not done. That is the parliamentary correct way of dealing with something like that, and that was not done. Nobody has made a motion for reconsideration. So.
Are you suggesting a motion of reconsideration for the last meeting's vote or for the original?
It's the same thing, Chris. It's the same thing. It's a cute little way of saying, oh no, we're going to amend the one that passed.
Well, I just think if
we voted at the last meeting not to do this.
But if we vote to reconsider the last meeting's item, which was voted down, that still wouldn't set the record straight, which is something we have to do anyway. He was here before, regardless of what our feelings are about how the process worked, he was here, and we need to reflect that. So reconsidering the last vote wouldn't reflect the needed change to the original motion, which stated out the date he would be in the district.
Which was the Friday before the Monday of our meeting. And, you know, when we have a meeting on a Monday night and somebody started working the Friday before that, and yet the item that comes to the board says January 2nd, And nobody on the board is aware that not only did somebody start the previous Friday, but was planning to work 2 days that week and 2 days the next week. I think we have a big problem.
I agree with you 100% that we have a problem with the process, and we've talked about that, and we need to move forward with that. That doesn't change what we need to do to make things right for what did transpire in terms of people who worked and everything that goes along with that. I agree with you. The process needs to be fixed. But that doesn't change the fact that we need to take care of somebody who did come in and do the work as requested.
You know, there have been many times in my kids' existence where a teacher came in to substitute on a long-term basis for a teacher that they had, and every single time that I'm aware of, that teacher came in on their own. Because the thought was, God forbid, that I'm going into this job, I need somebody's help getting prepared for it, my problem. And as far as I'm concerned, what's good for the teachers is good for the administrators.
Okay, Mrs. Swasan.
Can I just ask a point of clarification? The last time we voted on this, was it for less than 60 days? In other words, right now, this vote is just changing the start date from January 2nd to December 14th, but not to exceed 60 days?
That was original.
Yes, that's correct.
It's the same.
So in both cases, we're not adding days?
No.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Gillette.
Thank you. I think Mrs. Haas has a good point on her first point. And I think we could, we could have called the attorney for $175 an hour and find out if it's acceptable to put a differently worded agenda item that has the same effect as the other agenda item that did not pass previously that would have the same effect if that's an acceptable practice. We could do that. I think what the attorney might do in this case, and I don't want that, we could call him and find out. What I think he might do is come up with another solution to fix the overriding problem, which Mr. Pulsifer has stated, that an employee who comes and works in our district and is in effect employed needs to be paid for their employment. I think we would be derelict in our duty if we did not pay an employee who is here to be employed. Anything else that if mistakes were made and procedures were not followed, communication broke down, absolutely, we should take that under advisement as a board. But I think the solution here maybe is exactly what Mrs. Haas suggested, that someone makes a motion to reconsider either one of the two votes. Make a motion to, is that the right Robert's rule?
Well,
reconsider.
The issue is
vote from 2 weeks ago. Let's make a motion to reconsider that vote, and then if that motion passes, then we can make a motion to have that same vote again. No.
That's possible. This motion again is a amendment to the previously approved motion that was almost by the entire board.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, my interpretation is if we were to reconsider the vote from last meeting, we still haven't addressed the fact that the start date is wrong and needs to be adjusted. So that independent, we need to adjust that, because if we approve payment without also straightening out the timeline, I think we're still in kind of a little bit of a sticky situation. It's maybe bookkeeping and procedural, but we should have our books in order in that sense. But again, this is something we do all the time. We pass a motion to grant, and I'll just use an example, family leave for teacher ABC from this date to this date. It passes, everything's fine. Something comes up, there's a change. We don't vote to reconsider, we don't go through all those machinations. All we do is we have a vote to amend the original approved timeline to a new set of dates. Whether we move the beginning earlier, we push the end out, shift them both, do whatever, we just amend the previous one. So to me, this is very similar to the same thing. We got caught in a calendar situation, we need to have an adjustment to the formal approval of a calendar window that now has to change, and and I would believe we need to take action on adjusting that window. Whether we reconsider the prior vote or not, we still need to set the calendar straight for the interim period.
And I just, for further clarification, I thought we had to put something back on the agenda because we had a quorum, but we needed 5 to vote one way or the other. Correct?
Correct.
That's, so it doesn't really matter which, I'm
So
trying to
that's-
figure out which one doesn't matter which one we're
That means the item
fixing, we
failed.
just have to,
That just means the item failed.
okay, so we're bringing it back. So,
No.
so I'm trying to figure out, we're supposed to bring it back because it failed?
Nope.
It failed and we're just,
You need a quorum of 5 people
Right,
to have
which
a
we had,
meeting.
right.
Okay? Certain items on the agenda require a majority of the full membership of the board as opposed to a majority of the quorum. So a majority of the full membership of the board was required, and this item did not get a majority of the full membership of the board. So it failed.
Actually, if I can make a point of order. First of all, it did not fail, it's a no vote. It can only be a vote if it had 5 affirmative and 5 negative votes. Secondly, a motion for reconsideration under Robert's rules only prevails when there's a negative vote.
May I just address very quickly just the substance of what the board is voting on? Andy was asked by me to attend a training of the new teacher evaluation model. Part of his role and responsibility as interim is to set up the trainings and to help communicate those expectations. I felt, and I still feel, that that was appropriate to have him be part of that training. It would have been retroactively approved, I understand that, and I understand that the board, rightfully so, is uncomfortable with retroactively approving pay for anyone. But there will be times that come up when we have a teacher that we need to cover a class, when we have things that come up with training that wasn't anticipated, that I will ask the board for its consideration to have that flexibility, to allow me to come to this dais, knowing that in good faith we ask the person to come on in and to participate in the training. He was also asked by me to have 2 days of overlap time with Mr. Rocco. That was an essential part of the transition in his departure, Scott Rocco's departure, Andy's arrival, and what I anticipate we will need as Guy comes on board again. That helps for smooth transition and smooth operation of the district. The third group, these other 2 days that are in question, occurred during the winter break. But it's very important to note, and this was reported incorrectly in an article from NJ.com, that those were vacation days. Those were not vacation days. Those were school work days for 12-month employees. You would have to take a vacation day in order not to come into work on those 2 days. He worked during those 2 days. Those were not overlap days. He didn't work alongside Scott Rocco. So, you know, that's the substance of what we're going to be taking action on tonight.
So we're going to vote on item B4. Roll call, please. Mr. Mahmood.
Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
No.
Okay, Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Swanson?
Yes.
Mr. Kint?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item B 5.3.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion for this? I think this was an abstention one. Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Okay. Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Swanson?
Abstain.
And Mr. Kint?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Motion passes. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item B6 of the action agenda, which is to approve staff stipends for respite night.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
I had a question.
Oh, sorry.
These stipend mention is less than the sum of the parts here. Are we picking up the balance on this?
No, this is all privately funded. Is that correct, Mr. Mahmood?
That is correct, Dr. Schiff.
You add the number of hours, various rates, you will find it adds up to $1,380. And the grant is for $1,000, FYI.
We'll check the math and get back to the board on it.
Is it that it's two separate grants, $1,000 from OR and the balance from the other group?
We received one check for $1,000, and that was from.
Oh, okay.
That was from one of the two groups. So I'm aware that $1,000 came in from one of them.
Jordan,
Ms.
Dr.
Huss.
Schiff,
Yes.
there's also a check from last year for $5,000 that's in the coffers that was not spent.
Very good.
Why is this going through our payroll?
Mr. Mahmood?
I think, Mrs. Haas, the approach was for our students with autism, when Mrs. Johnson approached us about this, we would use the district payroll to go through the tax-exempt ID number so that our students and the program wouldn't be taxed, and the board would approve it as with all public school contracts law. So that's the way we did it for the parents and for the program. That's the reasoning behind it.
Okay, thank you.
We're still on your vote, Mrs. Haas.
We're
We're
still
on your
on-
vote.
we're still on 6. Any other? Okay.
Yes. Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Wasson?
Yes.
Mr. Kintz?
Yes. Motion passes.
Motion passed.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item
B9.
B9, a motion to approve non-aligned administrators' employee agreements.
So moved?
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Haas?
Yes, I'd like to know what new costs are included in these contracts and what is going on with the rest of our unaffiliated staff.
I think I'll try to field that question. I may need some help from Mr. Mahmood and Mr. Renko. The purpose of codifying these contracts for the non-aligned administrators is that currently there was no clear indication of what their benefits were. They had certain expectations of what those benefits were: sick days, vacation days, tuition reimbursement, whatever additional benefits and other things were afforded other administrators throughout the district. This is only an effort to codify what those expectations currently are. Now, as far as other non-aligned people, I believe we have most contracts for most of those non-aligned. I'm not certain. Mr. Mahmood, maybe you can address that.
I'm actually not certain. I'm not certain also. I don't know, Dr. Rinko, if you were able to address it.
I'm prepared to address it. There are two changes that are a deviation from what the general contractual emoluments that they enjoyed before. Those two are a change in a reimbursement for professional development. That would be number one. And number two was a change in a sick day buyout from $13,500 to $15,000.
Those are the only two new items?
Other than the salary increases, which were negotiated before I got here.
Yeah, I'd like to understand that buyout for sick leave. I thought that was sort of contrary to capping sick leave payouts at $13,500. If we're allowing people to deposit those sick days into a retirement bank, isn't that contrary to the purpose of the law?
Well, actually, that was negotiated before I got here. But the law, the accountability regulations only pertain to superintendent schools. All other aligned or non-aligned, it's totally negotiable.
Cool. Happy for them.
Can I ask a question?
I saw Mr. Pulsifer.
I just want to add from the Human Resources Committee perspective, our feeling was that every employee deserves a document of some form, whether it's a contract or otherwise, depending on what their position is, that fully delineates what sort of what they can expect from us and what we can expect from them as it applies in their various job roles. And these people didn't have that. Jordan used the word expectations. Expectations aren't things that you can discuss and have a document that says I signed a document and you do, I am entitled to this or not. And it was, so the Human Resources Committee was really wanting to make sure that for these people who did not have a document that specified both their position and the district's position, that it was critical to do this. So, and again, most of this stuff is really codifying what already existed, but it was important, we felt it was important that they actually have a document that both sides can refer to as an ongoing thing.
So to clarify, besides what Mr. Rinko mentioned, it's reflective of the current practices with those individuals.
It's what the expectations were of those individuals.
What are the expectations for the rest of our non-affiliated staff? The secretaries, the clericals, the purchasing, the people who keep our place running?
Honestly, this was brought to my attention from those administrators, and that needed to be rectified. If we still see the same in other areas and they don't have those contracts, we'll be bringing similar things to the HR committee and making those recommendations.
I'll be watching.
Mr. Gillette.
Yeah. For the public, we're using terms of contract, employee agreement, but these 4 administrators remain at-will employees, just like most of our administrators.
Right, which is why they are individual contracts and not a group contract.
Right, okay. Just wanted to clarify that for the public. When you start using the word contract, it makes it seem like some obligation beyond just salary and benefits on a weekly, monthly basis.
Right.
Okay.
These are tenurable positions, though.
Yeah, I understand.
Mrs. Lay.
So if I understand, we have added this, we've increased the cap for 4 of the unaffiliated employees, and we may need to adjust it for the rest because,
No,
so
not
then,
these are non-affiliated people. We're currently in negotiations with our Principals and Supervisors Association, and through that collective bargaining process, there may or may not be any changes to that particular benefit.
I know it's not a big number, but it's the spirit of the, I'd like to understand why the superintendent is capped and we are adjusting it for.
Maybe Mr. Renko can comment on that.
Yeah.
He has a lot of background in this particular area.
Having testified before members of the legislature, on my read on it, it was the governor's
May want the microphone, Mr.
foray
Renko.
Can you move the microphone real quick?
It was the governor's first foray into actual or perceived cost savings, and he started with the superintendents. And that became part of the accountability regulations with the caps and a reduction in a number of different benefits, including sick days, travel allowances, and a whole host of them. And part of that came out of recommendations from the SCI investigations, and it found its way into commissioner's regulations. It's not law, it's commissioner's regulations.
So if we're doing this on a state level, then why are we adjusting it at a township level for 4 employees?
So as I understand it, it's solely, that cap is solely for superintendents?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone that is not a superintendent is not bound by that? And these members are not, these individuals are not members of a collective bargaining group. And so there's no requirement to have parity or among members of a collective bargaining group versus those who don't, or who are not members of those.
Yeah, I can see why that there's no requirement, but what message are we sending as a board?
I mean, each board member can specify that. I'm quite comfortable having members, individuals who choose not to be part of a collective bargaining group, that we deal with them as individuals. And then bargaining units, we address as a bargaining unit. That's why you don't have the exact same language between the SPA and the HEA. They're different bargaining units. They are advocating for their members, and the needs of those members are different, which are then different from the individuals.
if I could add, I think, at least my interpretation, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but there's also the message that growing, for all employees, that growing your skill sets and aspiring to become a senior leader within the district is something we want them to do, and we want to make that something that they would aspire to, and that's part of how you demonstrate that that's a valuable position, that you'd like people to work to improve themselves to be able to get to that point, is by potentially having some forms of compensation that make that position. It reflects what value we place on that position.
And I would add that the addition of professional development for these individuals, I think, aligns with the spirit that we have with professional development for all of the district's employees.
Yeah, no, I actually wasn't questioning that, but when this was raised, it kind of made me think about the contract, yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion for this item?
What are we doing now?
B9. We are voting on item B9. Okay. Any other discussion? Looking around. Okay. Roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Okay, Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Lay?
Abstain.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Wasson?
Yes.
Mr. Kinst?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay.
I ask for the board's consideration of the following motions under the area of operations: to approve the monthly financial reports, the bills lists, line item transfers, approve the donation of $1,000 from the Autism Research and My Son, Your Daughter, the Jonah Johnson Youth Scholarship Fund, which helped to fund the respite care. And I believe this is the final motion on the agenda, the motion to approve a resolution to eliminate the vote on the annual budget and move the election of school board members to the general election in November.
I'd like to entertain a motion for approving items C1 through C5.
On behalf of all of the wonderful Operations Committee people, voting and non-voting members, I recommend, I move C, all of C, 1 through 5.
Okay. I'm going to take presidential prerogative and separate out C5 before anybody asks.
All right, C 1 through 4.
We'll do C1.
Motion for C 1 through 4.
Okay.
Any second?
Do I have a second? Any discussion for items C1 through C4? Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Wasson?
Yes.
Mr. Kinst?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay. Drum roll. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item C5 of the action agenda.
You're the big proponent.
This is for the entire board, so I'm
so moved.
Throwing up
Second.
to whoever. Okay, Chris and Dana. Okay, discussion. Who would like to start? Mr. Pulsifer.
I'll start. First of all,
Actually, I just want to have a couple things just to kind of set the stage. This is a decision that's solely it's the responsibility of the board. So, Dr. Schiff presented his position on how it impacts the administration and the running of the schools, but this is a board vote on when to elect board members. To lay the groundwork, I think there are valid arguments on both sides, and there are merits to both of those. And so in that spirit, I'd like to open up the discussion. So Mr. Pulsifer, please.
First of all, I would like to either amend or reconsider as appropriate a statement I made at the last time we had a discussion of this, and I was corrected after the meeting by, I believe, one of our reporters. I'm not sure who, that I said that the school board budget was the only budget that we were allowed to directly vote on. And I was wrong. We were also allowed to vote on the fire district budget. As just a point of record to go along with that, I think they have an even more, my word, apathetic turnout for their vote than we had for ours. So, standing corrected that we do get to vote on two budgets, I think that's wrong. Our entire governmental structure in the United States is based on selecting representatives to vote on your behalf, to gather information, and to consider all of the pieces of information that the entire public It's not feasible for everybody to become educated on all the details of what we process. And that's why we have a system of government where we vote for people to represent us, to work together, to balance and compromise and put forth what hopefully is the best for the collective and not necessarily for the individuals. That process applies to the federal government, it applies to the state government, it applies to our township government, but it does not apply to us. So that's my take on the representation. The other thing I think is very critical is that the public is not given a choice to decide what they want for school programs or what they don't want. They're not allowed to decide whether we should have a STEM program or not. They're given one choice to vote yes or no on some magic number. They don't have the details that goes into the level of research and balance and compromise that this board and the administration has done, and yet they're forced to make a critical choice, yes or no. If they say yes, we go on our way with that budget. If they say no, it goes to the Township Committee, who also, by and large, does not have knowledge of the balance and compromise and discussion that we have had to arrive at that budget. And they're in the same position, except they now actually get to pick a number, but they really don't have a basis to make that decision from. So interestingly enough, the group that has the most knowledge and the most research and the most background to make these decisions is the group that doesn't get to decide whether or not it happens. Seems maybe we're putting emphasis in the wrong place and we should have the right people making a decision. And just as a point of order, as a discussion point for those who would advocate somehow that we're disenfranchising, I don't see those people going up to the Township Committee, the state government, or the federal government and telling them, you're disenfranchising me by not letting me vote on the work you're doing. I just got my first paycheck in 2013, and I went backwards. I don't remember voting on that. That vote was done on my behalf by my representation, and there's no reason this board should not work in the same fashion. Thank you.
I was going to say, go ahead, Mr. Gillette.
Go ahead.
All right.
I dare you to follow that.
No. It was all right. I've heard you do better. But it was pretty good. It was pretty good. That was pretty good. I see both sides on this issue, absolutely. And I think, and I've been struggling with it, as some of you know. Even up to 12 days ago, I put my name to recommendation to keep the vote in April. And I think my heart tells me to keep the vote in April. But the facts don't lead that way, and I'll tell you why. We have had plenty of time to talk about this. We had a vigorous discussion a year ago, and we've had 9 months since the last April board election. So when we had discussion a year ago, I argued absolutely to keep the vote in April, to allow the public to come out and vote on the budget, because that's what they want to do. They want to come out and vote on that budget. And then 2 months later, we had something like an 8% turnout. 7% turnout. Yeah, even lower. Mrs. Santafanti came in first, and she didn't even receive 1,000 votes.
Thank you.
Well, that was a compliment. That was supposed to be good. Was that sound correct? Oh, okay. I can be self-deprecating too. A couple of years ago, I got 3,000 votes, and I came in. I didn't even win. I came in second. See, so I came in second. Now I didn't even do as good as you, Mrs. Santafanti. And that was just a couple of years ago. So that's the first thing. We've had a year. I really expected voters, after we sort of stuck our necks out there, after we knew almost all the school districts were going to move to November elections, we said, no, we're going to stick with it. We're going to stick with April, and then nobody came out to vote. That was tough. The second thing is, this whole idea of moving the vote to November, you can't vote on the budget. Look, Trenton saw a problem, and they made a solution to another problem. The problem was not enough voter participation. So let's increase voter participation by making it in November. But they wanted voter participation. What voters wanted to participate in was the vote on the budget. They don't care about board members. They don't care about us. So the one thing that they wanted to do, that the public wanted, they wanted more participation in the budget, and then they took away the budget vote. It's a tough decision, but ultimately, what I think is that if we're down to 7%, I think this is my final statement on this. I don't want to meander too much. If it gets much lower than 7%, I think you can disenfranchise the public more with having a very low voter turnout, where the vote can be commandeered by a special interest of any type. Anybody can get a couple hundred people together and go out there and vote and make a huge voting block. I think that will disenfranchise the person more than having a chance to vote out their board member in November that they think is not doing a good job. So ultimately, hey, if we had a good turnout in April, I would have something to hang my hat on here. We didn't, so that's all I have to say.
And can I just kind of comment on that?
Sure can.
One thing to remember is that people do have a chance to have a say in the budget. It's on our agenda item all the time. We've had no one come up yet and comment on our budget. We've had very few people even come and comment on their opinions about this vote. We have had some, we haven't had many. I have gone out and I have asked people, because I need to know. Because for me, there is a personal side of what I may want versus what the public is asking me to do. And I think there has to be a balance, and we have to weigh everything we have, but I think the people have to know you have a say in the budget. You have to come tell us your thoughts, and sometimes it will work with the strategic plan and where we're going and what we can do, and sometimes we may not all be aligned, and that's the way the board's going to be, but we're going to come to an agreement. So no matter which way the budget passes tonight, I think people need to realize that they can come and comment on the budget. That's all.
Mrs. Swan.
Last year, I wasn't on the board when you had the discussions, but I did come and attend a couple of meetings where you did, and I went out and talked to people as part of the electoral process. As has been said, we live in a representative republic, not really a democracy. Right. As a representative, an elected representative, I thought it was important to, before I formulated an opinion last year, which we were asked about during the election, I talked to people, and a lot of people were, I talked to mostly parents with children in the schools, who had seen budgets not pass, and were sort of flabbergasted that the board did not take the opportunity to sort of ease the process a bit. That if it was a reasonable, less than 2% rise in the budget, that budget would not have to be voted on by the public, which oftentimes does not inform themselves about the process or come here to talk about it. I do think, while I don't have the data to back it up, I think that was a big reason why people did not come out to vote last year, was because they really wanted to send a message that they don't want, they didn't value that say. I think of the few thousand people that came out, we probably knew them all, the three of us who were elected. And so I do think that the public is speaking, and all the people who I spoke to all thought we should vote to move it to November. And of course, try to keep budgets under control, because that's what one of our jobs certainly is. But I do think that we've heard input by people not showing up for that last vote.
I'll talk, and I'm speaking now as a member of the board, one of 9, 8 of which are present, not in the role that I'm serving as president. As I said, I think there are valid arguments on both sides, and for the merits, this law was written with bipartisan input, so it was approved by a Democratic Assembly and Senate and approved, signed into law by a Republican governor. So you've got a bipartisan crafted law that was approved by opposing parties. So they found common ground with that law. There's arguments that it's easier for the board and the district not to have to go through that budget cycle. For that, I kind of discount that. We're all big boys and girls. We can deal with what's provided or given to us. I will state that going to a calendar year versus an April year, I think actually aligns better with the calendar operations, in which if you have a set of board members who come on in January, that gives them an opportunity to look at the budget and craft it and then live with it. The way it's written now is that one third of the board who puts together the budget may not return, and so they may not have ownership for that. I believe that there is, looking at the numbers, there's greater participation just looking at the past November elections. When you look at those people the number of votes that went to a municipal election versus the comparable school board election, it was about 50% of the municipal vote was roughly about what the amount of people that voted in the school board. So it's still not 1-to-1, which we would hope for. Education is very important, as are the taxes, and so one would expect to have better participation. I'm not even going to compare it to what it was at the presidential or at the state level, which was even higher. For me, I have a set of core values, and I think part of that is I represent a portion of the population with that. And for me, government has, particularly at the federal and the state levels, is essentially gotten out of control where there's no accountability, I'd say, whatsoever. People get to vote once every 4 years for president. I'm sure, I don't know if you voted for 2%, but your president signed it, had Congress approve it, so no matter how people voted, they got a 2% tax increase, and I'm sure nobody wanted that. And so for me, being able to have accountability at the local level is actually most important, and that's where people can have the most influence. Having the ability for someone to vote on 70% of the property taxes that they own, I think, is an ability that people have had here in New Jersey. You can comment on, well, it doesn't happen in other states. In New Jersey, that has been the law and that's been the practice, and so people have had the ability to vote for that. And then also drives behaviors. So if a board knows and a district knows that their budget is going up for a vote, they're going to make decisions differently than if they knew they had carte blanche. So with the 2%, I think every other district that moved there, I don't know if there was one that went below 2%. That's not to say that this board would go straight to 2%. Last year we did not. It was a 1%. So we have at least an existence proof that this board, at least historically, has not gone to 2%. With that, again, it goes down to, for me personally, as a single board member, that having that ability to directly influence how a district operates is paramount. As a board, as a district, we rely on taxpayers' monies. We're accountable to them, and as I said before, I think it was a year ago, I trust the voters and respect their vote.
Untrust them if they should.
Mrs. Lay or Mrs. Haas? Yeah.
I agree with Tom. I've worked in government all of my life, And looking around the table, I can honestly say nobody's put up with more budget failures than I have. I was township administrator when one budget failed with a Democratic council. I was township administrator with a Republican council when the budget failed, and I was a board member 2 years ago when the budget failed. And it's not pretty, but I really think that the hard work of government is what makes it good. And it's very, very easy to sit here and say, well, you know, we can move the election to November and we'll deal with the consequences and we'll change our fiscal year from July to June and to January to December, or we'll not do that, or we'll have 2 reorganizations, or we'll do whatever it is. And we'll have a couple of people hanging around from November to January in a lame duck period. But the bottom line is, Tom makes a good point about voting on 75% of your taxes. You know, whether or not people show up, it's up to them. Maybe if they're not showing up, it's because they're happy with the way things are going. And honestly, even if it's just a symbolic gesture, I think it's healthy for people once a year to be able to go into a booth and either say, Board of Ed, you're doing a good job, or Board of Ed, you're not doing a good job. And I think it holds our feet to the fire.
That's not what the vote does.
And I just don't see this board engaging in the same process if we're not going to be responsible for going out into the public and selling a budget as we have every year that I've been on the board in a very active way. And I think that justification is important as well. And with all due respect about everybody's paycheck getting cut a little, you know, you might say, well, the next time you're not going to vote for your congressman, or the next time you're not going to vote for the president. Well, guess what? You're not going to have a chance to vote for the president next time, and you're not going to have a chance necessarily at the next time to vote for the people who did this to you, or to vote against the people who did this to you, if you care about it. And I think it's a little bit too simplistic to say that, well, you know, we put people here who are going to be responsible for this. I've seen many Board of Ed elections where there haven't been many choices around Somerset County, in a lot of the towns where they're voting for November elections. Many of those boards couldn't even get 3 people to run. Many of them had 1 person running or 2 people running, couldn't even get 3 people to run. And other places may have had 7 or 8 people running and no education in the public about who these people were, because everybody was tied up in the presidential election this year and the gubernatorial election next year. There will always be an election that will be more exciting in November than the school board election. You know, I could say that practically factually, okay? So as long as school board elections will never command the attention of all of the political contests, which are way better funded and way more interesting generally, I think this little April cutout of ours has been productive, because that's the one time of the year where everybody is focused on the school board. And if people don't come out to vote, we've done our best to get them out to vote. So I would say leave things as they are. And I would also suggest to the board that the legislation does not state that as long as you keep your budget under a 2% cap, you're fine. It just says under the cap. Well, perhaps that cap will be reduced. Perhaps that cap will go away. So as long as there are unknowns, I'm not prepared to compromise the quality of education in this town to support a potential unknown in terms of our ability to support our staff and support our curriculum. So I'll stick with April.
Right, yeah, she knows that. She does that.
Tom?
Mr. Paulson?
I'd just like to clarify something. When I made that statement about not being able to vote on that impact on my income, I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
I'm more than willing to accept that decline in pay if the government believes, the government that has much more information in hand and makes that decision. My point is to people saying we're taking away their vote. We deal with that everywhere else. We accept. We complain about it and we go vote about it by voting for representatives, and this should work the same way. I'm not suggesting that I well, sure, I'd love to have the money back. But my point was not to say that it was unfair or wrong that they did that. My point is we accept that everywhere else. That's the way the system works, and we should continue to work the same way.
Okay. I think that was clear.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I muddied
No,
in
I
my discussion.
Just making sure.
Okay, I think most board members have spoken. Are there any more that would like to speak? Mrs. Lay.
I really appreciate my fellow board members' opinions, and I hope the public understands it. We take this very seriously, and it's the same level of discussion and thought that we put into the budget. And that's what, these are the people you elected, and that's what I believe in this process. So from a practical standpoint, I like the idea of moving to November because we have one less election and one less election in our schools. So that reduces the security issue that we have. So that's a practical matter. And my vote to move the election to November is based on what our town experienced when I first served on the board in 2010. And it's interesting because Judy brings up the same experience and has a different outcome of that. But at that time, our district had a $5.2 million drop in state aid. And then the township committee, after our budget failed, took out another $1 million. And I'm going to highlight just briefly the issues that we had to deal with and how long it took to recover so that people can understand the impact of these problems that we had. 66 employees were cut, and that affects class sizes. We delayed the online student information package, and that has clearly been helpful to students and their families. And it wasn't even until this fall that we got the electronic report card system. We eliminated a high school writing center, elementary school languages. It wasn't until this year that we got, and we actually improved on it by researching and understanding the needs of our community. And now we have Spanish and Chinese in our elementary school. But it takes so much time to recover. And we stopped installation of LCD projectors, and now we have them. And this school year's budget, as another board member said, was it increased our township property taxes by less than 1%. And I believe it was a responsible budget. It acknowledged the economic conditions of our time. It reduced the class sizes that we were able to deal with some of them. And it was a result of a mutual desire between the teachers' union and the school board to maintain stability within the school district. And these are responsible actions that we take. We don't have to always automatically think about 2%. I know a lot of us didn't. We looked at the strategic plan, and then that informed our decision. So I believe in this process. I think that the public entrusted us to do a good job, and they can always talk to us. We are really open to hearing from the public, and that's why that's what has allowed me to make my decision.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'd like to have a roll call, please.
Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Oh, wait, hold on, before I start. Okay, so this is actually moot. The approval is by the approval of the people that are here. It's not for full board, so we've got 8 people. In order to move it, we need to have 5 votes in the affirmative. Thank you. Roll call, please, Mr. Mahmood.
Ms. Bogoshevsky?
Yes.
Ms. Santafonte?
Yes.
Mr. Gillette?
Yes.
Mrs. Haas?
No.
Mrs. Lay?
Yes.
Mr. Pulsifer?
Yes.
Ms. Wasson?
Yes.
Mr. Kintz?
No.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. The school board elections will occur in November. I think we can take the petition for the April elections off the website. And today is January 28th, 2013. We can bring this back up for discussion 4 years from now, based on the current law. All right.
At which point we will all have been voted out because they don't like us.
Yeah, well, who's going to be here?
Okay, next item on the agenda.
public comment.
Comments on old business? And then old business for board members.
No public.
Or are you signaling somebody to come speak for?
No, I was looking.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was looking for somebody. I meant to say this earlier, but I wasn't paying attention to our agenda. There was a person announcing a retirement tonight who I think has played a critical role in this district, not only in how long she's been here, but the role she's played. Barbara Parker has been on the other side of the table from me on numerous occasions. Sometimes we agreed, sometimes we disagreed, but she's always been a consummate professional. She was always working her best for the children in this district, and I think she should be applauded for that service. Thank you, Barbara.
We'll do that again in 6 months too, right? You're not getting on, you have 6 months.
I'm not coming to that meeting, Barbara.
I guess this is old business since we just passed a controversial vote. It's not the first one this year. We've had others. And as we stated before, individual members have their opinions. They voice it. I value the diversity that we have for this board. We're all share a common goal for making the best district that we can. And now that the board has acted, so shall we all. So. But we're moving on. So just to reiterate that, to acknowledge that. Any other old business from board members? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh.
On.
Yeah.
We can have public comments for old business.
For
Yeah.
business. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, there's no rigid law on that.
Right. Old is more than 5 minutes ago?
It's in the past. That makes
in
it
the
old.
past.
Thank you.
I just want to thank Tom and Judith for standing up for the citizens here in Hillsborough. It's true leadership, and we need to maintain leaders like you on a board. You have my full support, and I will do anything I can to help you both continue on your ways, whatever I can do. You both have a history of really well thought out replies and responses in these kinds of situations, and we need people like you in higher levels of decision making, because you truly understand what it means to be a part and a citizen within a system, within, by the way, a failing system. We currently exist in an era where there is massive political, economic, and social indicators that all these systems are in decline. So it doesn't really make sense or suit us or our own best interests to act in the same manner as that which is already failing. It's insanity. This is an opportunity to right what you have failed to do as leaders, educational leaders, which is inform the public of what it means to vote. You have a 7% turnout. That's a reflection on you. That's not a reflection on the citizens. You can laugh up there, you can shake your head, but it doesn't mean that what I'm saying doesn't have truth, honesty, and authenticity. The people of this town need to be able to exercise local control. Tom couldn't have said that better. The state has little oversight, and they're giving themselves more and more authority to make decisions, just like Judith pointed out, that are going to cut off your legs. They will not allow you the same decision-making power that you have today. You are not going to have it a year from now. there are changes coming down the pipeline, and if we don't work together, if we don't come together as individuals in a community with multiple perspectives and bring our individual experiences together to see what we can do to better our educational system, our local system in Hillsborough, we are failing our children. It is your responsibility as educational leaders to take this as an opportunity to open dialogue with the citizens, to inform them of the budget, to talk to them about why it's important to be informed of our budget, and then find out what can they do to help. We can have these conversations. We can work together. It's your responsibility to open up that dialogue. It is not the responsibility of the masses to come to you. You are the leaders. You're the leaders. So lead. Lead us towards what we need. We need a vibrant local economy. We need students to have access to authentic learning opportunities. We don't need the state telling us how to educate our children. We don't need canned programs. We have the talent in our teachers. We have the talent in our communities. We need to use it, and we can work together to do it. But we can't work together when you distrust us, because in turn that distrust is reflected right back on you. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Tom, for standing up for the citizens that couldn't be here today.
Thank you, Mrs. Dowd. Appreciate the words, although I do not condone the commentary for my fellow board members. As I mentioned before, the board has acted. They've put a lot of thought into it, and we should move forward. Thank you.
Good evening. Barbara Parker, 21 Estate Road. I need to thank all of you, regardless of the way you voted tonight, because you gave a lot of thought to this last year, this year again. And I need to correct some misconceptions regarding going out to the public or the public coming here. Not only, as some of the board members mentioned, do the public have an open invitation to come to every one of these meetings. The agendas are put out publicly in advance of the meetings. Every one of them says public input on the budget. And I don't believe that I've seen more than 2 people here in all of these meetings. Excuse me. The board has also put out in their instant alerts that they can be emailed. They have a website. They have the opportunity, it's listed on every board agenda, how many members of the citizens wrote letters to them or gave input on the budget. In fact, if you knew the numerous hours, one reason that I am glad that this passed tonight is that our superintendent of schools has such an overwhelming job and all of the facets of this school district that he needs to handle. And what does he do in the spring? He goes out coffee clutching to homes that are open to him so that citizens, maybe a handful here or a handful there, might come and hear about the budget. So he goes out to them. They have public information meetings where he's like on the circuit going out to the home and school associations. This board does more to get out to the public than any Board of Education that I'm aware of. I happen to be the president of the Somerset County Education Association, which encompasses all of the school districts in Somerset County. There is no other Board of Education that does as much to inform its public as this Board of Education. So I have to say thank you, all of you, for the thought that goes into this vote. I can understand both sides of it as well. I know on behalf of the teachers, we are very grateful that it's going to November because, number one, we don't want the Township Committee to have the opportunity to cut the budget any further. And secondly, because we want these leaders to be doing what they need to do, and that's leading the school district, not going out with a dog and pony show to get a budget passed that is a fiscally responsible budget to begin with. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mrs. Parker. Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
There we go.
Second, third, fourth.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Meeting adjourned.